One Piece Blades of Fire Chapter 421-440. Chapter 421. Passing Through. Zhang Yang in the dark heard some people talking around him, and he felt his body swaying, and there was someone breathing in his ears. He narrowed his eyes, only to realize that he was actually on Kakashi's back. "Yo, you're awake." Kakashi felt the movement behind him, and turned his head to chat with Zhang Yang. "Huh, why are you carrying me behind your back? Is the war over?" Zhang Yang looked left and right, surrounded by Shikamaru, Dingji, Ino, Ya, Hinata, Shino, Tiantian, Neji, Shaoli, Sakura, and others. Matekai, Shikaku and some other Konoha Jonin should be the Konoha Jonin who came to support him. When they saw Zhang Yang woke up, they all stopped their conversations, and all looked at him with a smile. "It's over, thanks to you, the hero," Kakashi said with a smile. Zhang Yang jumped off Kakashi's back, recalled what happened just now, and asked in surprise, "Everyone? Are they all resurrected?" "Nagato used his Rinnegan to pull our souls back. He has changed his mind for Xiaonan, and is now waiting for the trial of the 5 shadows in the Iron Country cell," Kakashi explained. "Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya also, senior, they are still in the country of Iron, and it was Sakura who treated you, and now we will escort you back to Konoha." Quote. "Is Nagato? It's great, it seems that everything is over." Zhang Yang breathed a long sigh of relief. Although he saw that the people around him were really in front of him, he still felt a little blocked, and he always felt less something. "What's wrong?" Xiaoyin came over and gave Zhang Yang a light punch on the shoulder, then raised her eyebrows and asked, "Do you miss Princess Naizi?" Zhang Yang patted his head, and it turned out that this was what blocked his heart. It seemed that he hadn't seen her for a long time. He just wanted to forcefully go back to Konoha to visit Naizi, but as soon as he exerted force, the wound on his abdomen spread. Pain came. What's up with this wound?" Zhang Yang felt that it was inexplicable that he had the aura of the protagonist. How could he be hurt by others? But no matter how he recalled, he could not remember how this wound was left. Seeing that Zhang Yang was so impatient, Kakashi on the side comforted him. "Don't be impatient, we just arrived at the border of the country of fire." Zhang Yang shook his head. He had a hunch that he would not be here for long, so he said to Kakashi, "No, I have to go to her now, and I have something very important to tell her." What a young boy. Kai was moved to tears, and he guessed that Zhang Yang must be in a hurry to confess. "Well, since you are so stubborn, you can only rely on the 3 guards of the 4th generation," Kakashi said and called the 3 Konoha Junin in the crowd. They used to be the guards of the 4th generation of Hokage. The 3 it can launch the Flying Thunder God at the same time to transmit people and objects in an emergency. Zhang Yang stood among the 3 of them, feeling extremely anxious in his heart. He always felt that there was not enough time, so he urged them to start ninjutsu quickly. "You have to get ready, the destination is the roof of the Hokage office," one of them reminded. After the 3 of them worked together to launch Flying Thunder God, Zhang Yang disappeared in front of everyone's eyes in a blink of an eye. Everyone was still teasing Zhang Yang and missing him too much, but what they didn't expect was that when Zhang Yang went away, never appeared again. The surrounding environment has undergone earth-shaking changes, like being in a space tunnel. At first, Zhang Yang thought that this was the reason for the Flying Thunder God technique, and he was traveling through space. But after a long time, he felt that something was wrong, and his face became pale after brushing, and he seems to be crossing. As he whirled wildly in the time-space tunnel, it didn't take long for him to see Fulang rushing out of his body, flying and rolling around him. "I'm finally free, I'm going back to my own world, ha ha ha." Fu Lang laughed. "Hey, where are you going, stupid dragon? Don't leave me like this." Zhang Yang wanted to catch Fu Lang, but he could only watch it get further and further away from him. "Kid, thank you, I will give you a dragon scale. As long as you wear it, it will make you invulnerable and protect your life," Fu Lang said, getting smaller and smaller, and disappeared on the other side of the time-space tunnel. Only his tiny voice could be heard from a distance. "Good luck, we will meet again." Zhang Yang just wanted to scold Fo Lang for being ungrateful, but a strong light suddenly appeared in front of him, and he hurriedly closed his eyes and reached out to cover it. Immediately afterwards, there was a cool air in his ears, and he felt his center of gravity was moving upwards. When he opened his eyes again, he saw that he was falling down from a height of hundreds of meters. Do you want to be so ruthless? Zhang Yang turned around in the air with difficulty, turned his face down, and then launched an ninjutsu, Water Escape. Water Dragon Pillar Jutsu. He wanted to use the impact of the strong water column to buffer the speed of his fall, so that he would not fall into a muddy flesh, but he gestured with his palm over there for a long time, and not a drop of water came out, the only moisture was the sweat in his palm. This is bad, I must have left the world of Naruto, and all ninjutsu and so on are useless. What to do? Seeing that he was about to land on the ground face first, Zhang Yang shouted in anguish. At this moment, a golden palm-sized scale floated out from somewhere in his body. It's Fo Lang's dragon scale. It's really sending warmth across thousands of miles. With help that spans time and space, you still have a conscience. Zhang Yang was so moved that he almost cried. He hurriedly lifted the dragon scale and shouted, "Give me strength." "No, help, Fo Lang." Finally, just before he fell to the ground, the dragon scale in his hand turned into a piece of golden light and melted onto the surface of his body, forming an extremely hard protective film. After a loud noise, Zhang Yang, who got up from the pit, rolled his eyes and staggered out of the pit, scolding, "Your uncle, it still hurts." After the ghost cry and wolf howl, the golden light on Zhang Yang's body fell off, and it all disappeared after being sprinkled on the ground. Sa1 off. Zhang Yang roared again, "Just trick me like this. Just wait, if there is a chance to meet again, I will definitely take off all the scales on your body." While complaining, Zhang Yang looked at the surrounding environment, a barren grassland, surrounded by mountains, and occasionally a few birds, beasts and insects could be heard from a distance. I don't know what kind of world this is, so Zhang Yang had to act first and ask around. At this moment, there were several voices calling for help from behind him. Zhang Yang thought that someone just happened to be here, and he didn't have to work hard to find someone. He turned around happily and looked dumbfounded. There were 3 people running towards him. The one with good legs was a monk in a red cassock. Behind him were 2 guards with knives. Looking back, it was a big and majestic tiger. Chapter 422. It turns out to be Journey to the West. With a deafening tiger roar, the monk who ran at the front was so frightened that his tears flowed. When he saw Zhang Yang, he hurriedly cried for help. "Help, bald man. Help me." "Who, bald man?" Zhang Yang touched his bald head, feeling unhappy, thinking, "Who is this person? With such a mouth, he deserves to be chased by a tiger." The monk and the 2 entourages behind him ran past Zhang Yang in a single swipe. Seeing that the tiger jumped up at a vigorous pace and opened his mouth to bite down on Zhang Yang's head, he very leisurely activated the flow of blades in his body, violently boiling. White steam burst out from his body instantly. The tiger burned his face and claws by this heat wave, rolled on the ground and wailed twice before fleeing in embarrassment. Seeing this, the 3 people ran back to thank Zhang Yang. "This bald brother has boundless mana, you want to become an immortal." The monk gave him a thumbs up, then turned his head to criticize his 2 entourage. "Look at you, you are so strong, even a tiger. You can't beat it, what's the use of you?" The 2 attendants turned their faces away with aggrieved expressions, and hummed twice in their mouths. "What, don't you like to hear the 2 of you?" The monk got angry, walked up to them and taught them one by one. "Look at you, your arms are thicker than my legs, look at you again. Big % legs are thicker than my head, both of you are carefully selected by my Emperor Tang to protect me. Why are you ashamed to see the tiger running faster than me? Ashamed or not, shame or not, cowardly or not. It's not all your fault, why are all men to boo? When you urinate, you urinate. If you have to dig into the woods, you can dig into the woods. If you see a tiger sleeping, don't run away. If you have to touch someone's butt, you say you owe it or not." One of the followers complained. Eating fast food by myself, we have to force us to eat together, and we are not allowed to eat meat. We have been hungry for so many days, even if we encounter a cat, we can't even fight. Another entourage also complained. You, still motivated, aren't you? The monk stared, stood up straight, pointed a finger in the direction they came from, and said, Go back now, go right away, I see how long Xiao Lizzie can keep you alive. This time, the two of them stopped talking, and bowed their heads and stepped aside, weeping sadly. After the monk finished speaking, he turned around and bent over and said to Zhang Yang with a smile, This bald. Zhang Yang stretched out his hand to cover his mouth and interrupted him. Everyone is bald, don't speak so straight. After that, the monk took off the monk hat on his head, revealing his black and beautiful hair, and smiled at Zhang Yang. You are bald, I am not. Zhang Yang was dumbfounded when he looked at it, and said, You are using rejoice. Why do you wear a cassock and a monk's hat if you are not a monk? By the way, who are you? Cough cough. The monk stood up straight, folded his hands together, and bowed to Zhang Yang. The poor monk is a Tang monk who came from the Tang dynasty in the east and was sent to the west to worship Buddha and ask for scriptures. Tang sang. Zhang Yang's eyes were about to fall out. This was Journey to the West. No wonder he felt a little familiar when the three of them were chased by tigers. It turned out to be Elder Tang. Zhang Yang hurriedly returned the salute, and then asked excitedly, But why do you have hair? I remember that you were taken in by the old monk of Jinshan Temple since you were a child, and you have been a monk since you were a child. When Tang Seng heard what Zhang Yang said, he was also surprised and asked, How do you know my background? Zhang Yang was anxious and wise, and hurriedly shook his head to cover up. I also heard hearsay. Tang Seng was skeptical, thinking about which long-tongued woman even told outsiders about her own life experience. Could it be Sister Guanyin? If Sister Guanyin said it, then this person must not be immortal. Thinking of this, Tang Seng gave Zhang Yang a thumbs up again, raised his eyebrows and asked tentatively, Shengxian. Zhang Yang waved his hand and said, As for me, I don't know how to explain it to you. Anyway, I'm not an ordinary person, do you understand? You also saw that just now, that tiger was beaten by me to the point of looking for its teeth. I'm better than you too. A great follower. How about Elder Tang taking me westward? Let's not talk about how many monsters you will encounter along the way. Anyway, there will be no shortage of beautiful women, especially in the country of daughters. The whole country is full of women. If the king can be included in the bag, then the women in the whole country will not be. Zhang Yang thought here, saliva can flow out. Tang Seng thought for a while, and then interrupted his lustful thoughts. This bald. This donor, do you really want to go to the West Heaven? The journey is dangerous, and I'm afraid the donor's body will not be able to bear it. Tang Seng said this, and he was already scolded in his heart. It is such an important task to go to the West to obtain scriptures. Let's not talk about how much merit you can get in the hands of the Buddha. When you come back to Tang Dynasty, Tang Wang Li Shimin will send officials to send money to send beautiful women. One more just opened his mouth to have an extra pair of chopsticks. Tang Seng didn't want to share these with an outsider, and even he wanted to send these two followers away. Zhang Yang nodded. His attitude was very firm. Yes, in order to save all beings and save the world from the dire straits, I must go. Because the world rises and falls, everyone is responsible, Elder. Tang Seng was bad when he heard it. I didn't expect this guy to be so determined. I'm afraid it's not easy to let go. If he doesn't let go, will he get angry? If he gets angry, will his body start to smoke again and start hitting people, and he can't beat him even after a fight? The two idiots next to them will definitely pretend to be bored and not do it. The more he thought about it, the more terrifying he became. Tang Seng rolled his eyes, and finally came up with a solution. Donor, why don't you do this? Let my two followers go back to Tang Dynasty with you and report to Xiao Lizzie. Hello, officially incorporated into me westbound team, how about I wait for you here? After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Zhang Yang to open his mouth. He dragged his two followers and murmured. Listen, you take him halfway and then sneak attack, first with a left knife, then with a right knife, and finally find a place to dig a pit buried him, and I'll wait for you here. However, they were less than half a meter away from Zhang Yang, and he heard everything he said. He asked in confusion, Elder Tang, are you kidding me? Seng Tang, bawled. Ha ha ha, the donor is really humorous. All right, go ahead, I'll wait here. Tang Seng turned around and pushed the two followers to Zhang Yang's side, then said with a smile, take care of you, Amitabha. The entourages on both sides did not wait for Zhang Yang to speak, so they supported him and walked back, and the direction they were walking was not the road to Datang at all, and they walked towards the mountain on the side without taking 2 steps. Hey, do you want to be so obvious? Zhang Yang shouted. 2 strong men, are we sure we are going to the Tang dynasty? You guys are talking. Chapter 423. This Tang monk is a bit bad. Tang Seng watched his entourage carry Zhang Yang away, and when he couldn't see their figures, he ran away and ran wildly in the direction of the west sky by himself. Because Li Shimin gave Tang Seng the white horse of 1,000 miles, he was so hungry that he had no choice but to run all the way. Anyway, it was the reincarnation of Jin Chanzi, and there were various gods around him to protect his body. He neither felt tired nor I can't feel the hunger and thirst, and there is only one thought in my heart, that is, hurry up to the west to complete the task, and return to the Tang dynasty to enjoy the glory and wealth. After walking for about half a day, Tang Seng saw a mountain village, and sighed that God has eyes, and he could finally have a bite of fast food, so he hurriedly broke into other people's village. Inside lived a Taibao named Boken. He had a daughter-in-law, an elderly mother, and a child. When they saw the holy monk, they hurried out to greet him. It just so happened that Birkin went hunting in the mountains this morning, and the harvest was full, so he invited Tang Seng to dinner. When he brought a pot full of steaming and fragrant stewed tiger meat, Tang Seng looked disgusted and rebuked loudly, "Don't the poor monk look like a monk? Don't you know that all monks are vegetarians? What does serving a pot of meat mean? Are you trying to embarrass me, a monk, on purpose? Look at the stewed meat, it's fat but not greasy, soft but not loose, the meat is full, and the oil is overflowing." He said that the halazi was about to fall to the ground. Who said that monks can't eat meat? Tang Seng's heart is bitter, as the saying goes, wine and meat pass through the intestines, and the Buddha's heart will stay in his heart. He has kept so many Buddhas in his heart along the way, and the entanglement will soon be spent. The 2 attendants gnawed at the roots of the tree every day. Well now, there is a pot full of tiger meat with all the colors and flavors right in front of you, where is there any reason not to eat it? That's it, boy, let me taste a piece for you and try your handiwork. Tang Seng couldn't wait to take a piece of meat and quickly stuffed it into his mouth. No matter how hot his mouth was, he chewed it. Reluctant to swallow, well, yes, the craftsmanship is okay. I don't eat 2 pieces of such good meat. I'm sorry for your kindness. Next, Tang Seng no longer cared about his image, and he swept away the whole pot of meat with a feast of nonsense. The Boken family was dumbfounded. They looked at each other, unhappy but hard to express. Who would make them a holy monk? When Tang monk was sweating profusely, he took off his monk hat, revealing his sweat-wet hair. So, he was thrown from the villa by Birkin with one hand raised. Where are the untouchables pretending to be holy monks? Don't let me see you again, or you will be beaten every time you see me. I don't know what is alive or dead. When I get back from the scriptures, I will definitely ask Xiao Lizzie to smash your house. Tang Seng left angrily while sucking the oil in his hand. It didn't take long for the Tang monk to reach the border of the Tang dynasty, only to see a high mountain in front of it, shaped like 5 fingers. It was getting late at this time, and he had no choice but to go back to the villa to spend the night with the cheeky face, so he could only find a cave for the night. He came to the foot of the mountain before dark, and found a sunken mountain hole, just in time to hide. Coincidentally, there was a small stone leaning on the front of the mountain, just enough to digest a stomach of tiger meat there, so he sat down. As soon as he sat down, he heard a lazy voice from under his butt. "Hey, you're pressing me." Tang Seng looked down at his buttocks and asked in amazement, "Ass, why did you speak? It's such a big night, it will scare me to death." The lazy voice sounded again. "I'm not your ass, get up now, or don't blame me for being rude." Tang Seng sat so comfortably, how could he be willing to get up? So he continued, "You just let me sit for a while. Don't be so stingy. You say that you are a stone, and letting people sit is doing good deeds, especially if I have sat on it. That's awesome, man, you'll be promoted to Earth Immortal right away. Maybe you'll become a mountain god in this area. Don't challenge my patience. I count to 3 and you get me up." Ouch, people are so scared. My heart is about to jump out. Do you know who I am? And don't ask me what I did before the 10th life. 3. If you want me to say if you can be a little patient, what's wrong with letting me as a monk to rest? Did I rob you of something? You blame me for being so comfortable. Don't have a tone of deep hatred and hatred. Relax your heart, be a human being, and be a monster even more important. I don't know how you have cultivated until now, and you can still speak. It's really blind to the eyes of God. 2. Hey, I'm so grumpy, do you still count? Don't blame me for being rude if you keep making such a fool of yourself. 1. You forced me, I can't believe I can't make you shut up with my swampy stomach, poof. It was said that Zhang Yang was taken all the way to the deep mountains and forests by 2 followers. They saw that the surrounding terrain was wide and there were no wild beasts such as wolves, tigers and leopards. It was a good opportunity to start. Just when they were about to start, Zhang Yang said, "Are you feeling very tired? You have to work hard every day, only to be scolded by your own leaders like this." In one sentence, they reminded them of the days when they were servants under Tang Seng. When the horse was gone, he used it as a horse to ride. When it rained, he used it as an umbrella. In order to feed water. What is even more abhorrent is that they kick the quilt indiscriminately at night, and the 2 of them have to cover the quilt, worrying about catching a cold. After thinking about it, they began to cry. "Where is this holy monk? This is a giant baby." Zhang Yang patted them on the back. Although he didn't know what was actually posted, he could see that they had been depressed and aggrieved for a long time, so he comforted, "It's all right, you have left him, you are relieved. You don't understand. He and Tang Wang Li Shimen are brothers. If we go back like this, we will inevitably be beheaded. Yeah, life is hard, we also want to be good people." Another cried. "Well, I can also see that you are in pain. You have to be angry when you follow him. Going back to Datang is a dead end. This place should be not far from the border of Datang. You 2 should run for your life." Listening to Zhang Yang's words, they seemed to see a silver lining. This is a good way, why didn't we think of it? Many benefactors have shown us a way to survive. Zhang Yang sighed and thought to himself, if you were not stupid, how could you be arranged to protect Tang Seng from going to the west to study such a dangerous thing? But now it seems that this journey to the west is a little different from what he imagined, and Zhang Yang began to be interested in Tang Seng. Chapter 424, The Confession. Zhang Yang chased him all the way. He passed by the villa and asked Boken about the direction of Tang Seng, but he had no choice but to stay overnight. According to the development of the plot, Tang Seng should now be in Liangji Mountain, which is the mountain that trapped Monkey King for 500 years. When he thinks of the Monkey King, Zhang Yang is still very excited. He is a superhero in his childhood. I think that 500 years ago, he fought the Jade Emperor in the sky and the King of Hell in the ground. Such a rebellious great sage Monkey King would be worshipped by anyone. Seeing that Zhang Yang had already seen Liangji Mountain, a woman dressed as a peasant woman blocked his way. Where is this master going? The peasant woman was carrying a wooden basket in her hand, covered with blue cloth, with one hand across the basket and the other into the basket, not knowing what she was holding. Where did Zhang Yang have time to chat with her? He still had to hurry up to find Sun Wukong for an autograph, so he walked around the peasant woman with a big stride. As a result, Zhang Yang didn't take 2 steps when he heard an ouch from behind him. He turned around and saw that the peasant woman had actually fallen to the ground, looking at him resentfully. Punchy, auntie, don't do this, I don't have money. Zhang Yang was dying of depression. He didn't expect people in this era to do this trick, and he couldn't prevent himself. But what is he afraid of? There is no camera or something now, and where did the onlookers come from in the wilderness? Thinking of this, Zhang Yang continued on his way without turning his head. At this moment, Zhang Yang suddenly remembered, this is a barren countryside, and there is no farmland people along the way. How did this woman appear here? The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. Zhang Yang understood that she must be the Guanyin Bodhisattva who came to deliver the golden hoop to Tang Seng. Sure enough, when Zhang Yang turned his head, a soft white light appeared in front of his eyes, and a blooming lotus flower appeared in the middle of the light, and above the lotus flower was the Guanyin Bodhisattva, the great compassionate and merciful rescuer. With tears in his eyes, Zhang Yang knelt on the ground and kowtowed violently. Guanyin Bodhisattva, Amitabha Buddha. Don't come here, I want to set a price based on your current economic situation. Guanyin Bodhisattva said with wide eyes. What the hell, does the Bodhisattva still need money? Besides, it's clearly you who fell, you are a fraud. Zhang Yang was dumbfounded for a moment. Why is this Bodhisattva different from what was written in the book, so mundane? Stop talking nonsense. It was you who bumped into it anyway. I'm a bodhisattva and I have the final say, Guanyin Bodhisattva seemed to be indifferent, and then she continued, the monks don't want any money, but you have to do things for me. Atonement is the only way, otherwise, your soul will be sent to the 18 layers of hell, so that you will never turn over, never be born and never die, and be reincarnated in the ghost realm forever. Quote. OMG. Zhang Yang's legs softened when he heard this. As a bodhisattva who saves suffering, why is he so small-minded? 18 levels of hell, he didn't even dare to think about it, so he quickly kowtowed and apologized. I'm sorry, Guanyin Bodhisattva, tell me what you want me to do, and I will make good atonement. Well, since you are so sincere, then I'm welcome. Guanyin Bodhisattva said, now I'll officially appoint you as the captain of the Western Heaven Study Group, and give you another name, Tang Seng. Think again, Bodhisattva, Tang Seng is right in front of Liangji Mountain, you have to be responsible for what you say. The plot developed too fast. Like a tornado, Zhang Yang didn't have time to think, but his heart was too painful. Oh, you don't know, he was beaten to death by Wukong. Guanyin Bodhisattva sighed with a sad expression on his face. I came so late, you say, people just go like this, Amitabha, what a sin. Quote. Dead, was beaten to death by Sun Wukong. Zhang Yang couldn't believe what he heard and repeated, you mean Tang Seng was beaten to death by Sun Wukong? I can't blame that monkey. Who asked Tang Seng to fart on someone's head? I didn't say anything when I touched the tiger's butt. Now I fart on the monkey's head. What is this not courting death? Guanyin Bodhisattva said, I went one step late, but I couldn't stop it. There is nothing I can do now. I can only discuss with the Buddha and find another person to take the scriptures temporarily, because Tang Seng is the reincarnation of Jin Chanzi, and it has been 10 generations. Even the eldest disciple of Buddha did not have the patience to indulge him, so we gave up on him as soon as we discussed it. Anyway, as long as the scriptures can be passed to the Tang dynasty, it is considered to complete the task. Who will be different? Zhang Yang felt that he was tired from being thrown a few times in his head in a row, and the explosion gave him a headache. After just one night, the plot became like this. Tang Seng died and he was appointed as Tang Seng. This is too strange. He was still a little worried and continued to ask, then why me? Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva said to him with a look of caring for the mentally handicapped, you are the only one who is bald in the wilderness, so I don't want to look for you. Besides, you have to run a long way to go to the east, and the Bodhisattva will be tired. Please forgive me. In addition, you are a bit special. You cannot find your records in the 3 realms, but you are not a god, an immortal, or a Buddha. The Buddha said that you may have come from the gate of time and space, so naturally you should pay more attention to you. It turns out that, Zhang Yang understands, it seems that he has to go to the west sky this time. Since there is such a gate of time and space, maybe he can return to his own world. This is an opportunity and cannot be taken lightly. Give up. Then after I finish the task of studying scriptures, can the Bodhisattva let me use the gate of time and space to go home? Zhang Yang asked. I am indeed not from this world. As long as you can guarantee that I can go home, I will guarantee to complete the task. Guanyin Bodhisattva smiled and nodded very sincerely, of course. It's okay that she didn't laugh, but Isho made Zhang Yang shudder. Recalling the scene of touching porcelain just now, can she really believe what she said? Okay, since you have been officially appointed, I will give you the golden hoop, and give you a tight hoop spell. If the monkey wants to kill you, you will hurt him to death. Guanyin Bodhisattva took out the golden hoop from the wooden basket and handed it to Zhang Yang, then frowned and said, I don't know if this hoop mantra is right or not. I forgot my own if I didn't recite it for a long time. Alas, that's all, just let it be. After Zhang Yang took over the golden hoop, he was very excited and hurriedly put it on his head to try it out. This is a magic weapon used to subdue the great sage Monkey King, and it is still pure gold, so I don't know how much it can sell for. But when he was going to take it off after he was done with it, he was dumbfounded. The golden hoop seemed to grow on his head, and he couldn't pull it off. Chapter 425. This Wukong is a little faint. When people are declining, it is really hard to drink cold water. Zhang Yang has been addicted to wearing the gold hoop on his head just for fun. As a result, he can't take it off again. When he arrived at Liangji Mountain, he saw Tang Monk lying in a pool of blood and Sun Wukong in a stone crevice at a glance. Hey, Monkey King! Zhang Yang couldn't hide his excitement like a little fan. He squatted in front of Sun Wukong to clean up the dead branches and rotten leaves from his hair. Of course, the smell of Tang Seng's ass was still there. Wandering around his head, he didn't know what he had eaten so much smell. Zhang Yang pinched his nose with one hand and helped Sun Wukong remove the last dead leaf, and then introduced himself. Hello, great sage, my name is Zhang Yang, I am here to rescue you out of. Sun Wukong seemed to have no interest in Zhang Yang, and waved his hand impatiently. Go away, my old grandson has no time to go to the west, tell Guanyin and let her find someone else. This is quite surprising to Zhang Yang. He has been oppressed by the Tathagata Buddha for 500 years, how could he not have the heart to think of it at all? Shouldn't he be excited to call the master when he sees the person who rescued him at this time? Zhang Yang was a little embarrassed, so he had to look left and right, saw Tang Seng in a pool of blood, and suddenly found something wrong. Sun Wukong is pressed in the stone, how can he kill Tang Seng? This makes no sense. Could it be that Guanyin Bodhisattva is hiding something from himself? Zhang Yang pointed to Tang Seng's corpse and asked Sun Wukong, did you kill him? Is it over? Don't let my old son bother you, or you will end up like him. Sun Wukong turned his head impatiently, and then continued, put on his clothes and hat, go to the west sky while praying, don't beat me. Old grandson's attention. Che, don't you shame your face. If you can come out, you can do whatever you want. This made Zhang Yang a little unhappy. He was kind enough to save Sun Wukong, but his attitude was so bad that he took his good intentions as a donkey liver and lungs, so his tone also turned nasty. Hee, give you 3 seconds to disappear, 3. Sun Wukong sneered and began to count. 2, 1, I've finished counting for you, come on, be quick, come out and fuck me. Zhang Yang stood up and folded his arms with a disdainful expression. However, Sun Wukong looked up to the sky and sighed, Tathagata, you have seen it too, there are so many people looking for death, no wonder my old grandson. After saying that, he twisted his body twice and crawled out from the crack of the stone, stunned. The dirt on his body stood in front of Zhang Yang, tilted his head and asked, tell me, what is the way to die? Zhang Yang saw Sun Wukong standing in front of him alive, almost pissing his pants with fright. He quickly took a big step back, stared at him in disbelief and asked, how can you actually come out? It's not written like this in the original book, nor in the TV series. Acting. My old grandson changed into 72 and came out after shrinking his body. Why is he making such a fuss? Sun Wukong said and pointed to Tang Seng's corpse. Didn't you go to the west like him? I'll take you off. A ride, you're welcome. As he spoke, he squeezed his fist and smashed it at Zhang Yang's head. Zhang Yang was so frightened that his legs and feet became weak, and he never thought of running away, so he could only close his eyes and let Sun Wukong call him. As a result, I heard a muffled sound, and Zhang Yang didn't feel anything. Instead, he heard Monkey King make a suspicious voice. Huh. You bald man has a magic weapon on his body. Zhang Yang opened his eyes and saw a golden bell around him blocking the gap between him and Sun Wukong. He suddenly remembered that this was Fu Lang's golden bell hood. In fact, Zhang Yang thought that the dragon scale that Fu Lang gave him was a one-off, and he really wronged Fu Lang. After the dragon scale was used once, it turned into a golden light and existed in Zhang Yang's body forever, protecting him forever. Seeing that he had the golden bell hood to protect his body, Zhang Yang's confidence began to grow sharply, and it was about to overflow. He arrogantly scolded Sun Wukong. Stinky monkey, come on, try to touch a single hair of my hair. It's been a long time since I met this kind of challenge, so Sun Wukong got a little excited. He took out the embroidery needle-sized ruby gold hoop stick from his ear and shouted, "Change," from behind the sky, only to see it quickly became suitable. The size fell into the hands of Sun Wukong. This monkey should also have not held the golden cudgel for a long time. After playing with his hand for a long time, he swung the cudgel against Zhang Yang's head. Den. The collision of the golden hoop rod and the golden bell hood produced a strong shock wave, but it did not break it, not even a single crack appeared. My old grandson has lived for so long. It's the first time I've seen such a hard body protector. I recognize it, Sun Wukong said, shrinking the golden hoop and putting it back in his ear, then turned back and drilled back into the stone. Seam. Hey, what's the matter with you? The dignified great sage Monkey King, why is he so unmotivated? Zhang Yang walked towards Sun Wukong, and the golden bell hood on his body disappeared automatically. He came to the front of Sun Wukong and squatted down again, and then asked, "Can you talk to me? Since you can come out, you are free, why are you staying here? Although my body is free, my old grandson's heart is trapped, where can I go? There is no place for my son Wukong in the three realms, so I might as well stay here, maybe when I will meet up with you. This mountain merges into one and turns into a stone again, which saves trouble." The more Sun Wukong said, the more depressing the atmosphere. He simply buried his head in the weeds. It can be seen that something must have happened to him. Zhang Yang was still a little worried for him, so he asked, "Why don't you go back to Wagwo Mountain?" Wagwoshan. Sun Wukong's voice came from the weeds. Ha ha ha, my old grandson is a stone spirit born from the essence of the sun and the moon, not a monkey in Wagwoshan, why should I go back? Zhang Yang could hear that his laughter was very reluctant. Sure enough, there was something wrong with Wagwo Mountain, but in order to find out what happened, he had to ask again, "Can you talk to me? Maybe your heart is tied to me. Can help you untie it." Quote. It's just you. Sun Wukong finally stuck his head out with an expression of distrust on his face. Where did you come from as a monk? Do you have such great ability? This is a long story. You should tell me what happened first. After I untie the knot for you, you have to promise me one condition, which is to escort me to the west to learn scriptures, Zhang Yang said. Provide you to go to the west. I can't hurt a single hair of your hair. Are there other monsters and ghosts that can hurt you along the way? Sun Wukong said. Besides, it should be this half-assed monk Tang Seng who went to the west. He is the golden one. Cicada is reincarnated, and the messenger sent by the Tathagata is him. You can't go to the western heaven. Chapter 426, Jin Chanzi. However, Guanyin Bodhisattva has already appointed me as the envoy of the Tang dynasty to fetch the scriptures. No matter who is going, as long as the scriptures are introduced to the eastern land, wouldn't it be enough? Zhang Yang asked. This is the fate of Jin Chanzi. Back then, he fell asleep when the Tathagata was teaching the Dharma, but the Tathagata was very careful and banished him to the mortal world, saying that he was going through hardships to understand the truth of the Dharma, but in fact he was treating him. This is the last life in which he was punished, and the journey of learning the scriptures is also full of difficulties, and it is impossible to say if he dies halfway. Sun Wukong was stunned when he finished speaking, because he was right, wasn't Jin Chanzi killed by himself just now? Zhang Yang also looked at the body of Tang Seng next to him, and found that what Sun Wukong said made sense. Now that Jin Chanzi's 10th generation has been punished, where will he go next? Going back to the West to recite sutras and practice under the hands of the Buddha, or continue his 11th reincarnation? Just when Zhang Yang was in a daze, a golden light suddenly came from Tang Seng's body, which spread all over his body, gradually condensed into the shape of a cicada, and finally flapped his wings to make a humming sound and flew up. I said that you were a monkey with a small mind. For example, you are still young, didn't I just put a fart on your head? As for killing me with one punch, it's really a sin. Jin Chanzi flew to Zhang Yang's shoulder, and said to him, "Bald, we meet again." Zhang Yang couldn't hear people calling him bald, so he stretched out his finger to shoot the golden cicada, and taught him, "Look at you, dozing off in front of Buddha, farting on Sun Wukong's head, you are like this all the time." With a cynical attitude, the second generation of Buddha is amazing, isn't it? Jin Chanzi flew back a few times in the air, and suddenly said very seriously, "Buddha is very careful, his eyes have no place for Taoism." First, he forced Bodhi Patriarch to hide in the 3 realms, and then he made a big havoc in the heavenly palace 500 years ago. I deliberately watched the Jade Emperor make a fool of myself when I was there. I was free in body and nature, and I was bored to listen to him chanting scriptures every day. Although my body was in Dalian Temple, my mind was in various places in the 3 realms, so I used this method to make him drive me to the lower realm. Quote. However, what he did not expect was that the Buddha's mind was too small, so that he became a learner in every life, and he died tragically halfway every time. In this 10th life, Jin Chanzi was reincarnated as a Tang monk. This time he had a prophet, and he always felt that he could not be a monk in peace. So he grew his hair long, pretended to be mad and sold stupid in the temple all day long, and made outrageous words, which made all the brothers and sisters in the temple disgust him. The most understanding is the old abbot in the temple. Extraordinary, there must be his reasons for doing this, so he let him leave the temple and travel around the world before he passed away. Tang Seng was naturally grateful, but in order to repay the old abbot for picking him up from the river and raising him, he decided to wait for the abbot to pass away and leave. As a result, he waited until the Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva came to the Tang dynasty to find a person to take the scriptures. Tang Wang Li Shimin was looking for eminent monks in the temples who could learn from the scriptures. As a result, in order to drive away Tang monks, the whole Jinshan temple recommended to Li Shimin that Tang monks were the most suitable candidates. Although Li Shimin had some doubts, the Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva agreed after seeing Jin Chanzi. He wanted him. Li Shimin didn't dare to question anything, and hurriedly worshipped Tang Sengzi as brothers, so that he could touch the light of Buddhism, and finally sent him a white horse and a follower, let him hurry on the road. Fate is like this, no one can avoid it, everything is predestined. Tang Seng knew that he would not end well in this life, and he also committed various deaths along the way, so when he arrived at Sun Wukong, it was natural to be killed. This is also according to his will. From then on, the reincarnation is over, and he can be free in the 3 realms without being restricted. After listening to him talk about these things, Zhang Yang suddenly regretted it. Didn't he have to suffer for Tang Seng along the way? At this time, Sun Wukong sneered and said, "Freedom. Unless you are the Tathagata, where does freedom come from? Do you really think the Tathagata would let you go like this?" Jin Chanzi retorted, "Everyone's definition of freedom is different. Some people think that restraint is freedom, some people think that being able to move around is freedom, and some people think that being able to eat all kinds of food without taboos is freedom. Monkey, 500 years ago, the freedom you thought was only the freedom of your body. You were king in hegemony in Wagwo Mountain, and you took the monkeys to enjoy the fragrance of fruits and the joy of the mountains, but you were bewitched by other monsters and tried to compete with Tianchi. Life, this is your bondage. In 500 years, the freedom you think has changed. When you secretly returned to Wagwo Mountain, when you saw the eyes of those monkeys whose names were crossed out from your life and death book, they looked at you with resentment. After seeing that they have a new monkey queen, and seeing that the monsters who used to be your brothers don't want to see you, you realize how lonely you are. Monkey, do you want to know why all this is? Sun Wukong's eyes were full of anger when Jin Chanzi said it, because everything he said was right. It doesn't matter how others treat you, but what Sun Wukong doesn't understand is why the monkey son of Wagwo Mountain hates himself. Wouldn't it be nice to live forever? He didn't understand, so he nodded, yes. Go to the west to get the scriptures, the answer may be on the road, maybe in the scriptures. Jin Chanzi said. Then what is your freedom? Sun Wukong asked the question he most wanted to know. For me, everything in the world has been penetrated, and there is no need to search for any truth. Living is the biggest bondage for me, so my freedom is. Jin Chanzi stopped here, the gold in the body began to glow red, and he burned himself to ashes and disappeared without a trace. Both Zhang Yang and Sun Wukong were dumbfounded. They watched Jin Chanzi burn himself to ashes, but they couldn't understand that this was the freedom he spoke of. After a long time, Sun Wukong finally got out of the Five Elements mountain. He said to Zhang Yang, he's right, I'm confused, so I'm going to find the answer. Maybe it can be found on the road, maybe it's hidden in the scriptures. Zhang Yang was also moved to tears, and the contrast Jin Chanzi gave him reminded him of a line from Master Sheng. Others laugh at me too crazy, I can't see through laughing at others. It turned out that this is the real practitioner, and this is Jin Chanzi. He spent 10 lifetimes of pain and suffering in exchange for his freedom. Before he left, he taught Wukong to find the answer on his own. Thinking of this, Zhang Yang felt more and more ashamed of himself. He didn't seem to be worthy of being Sun Wukong's master. He couldn't teach him anything. He had to listen to him calling him master all the time. How ashamed. Go away, bald man. Hearing Sun Wukong's greeting, Zhang Yang finally relieved his worries. It seems that this guy didn't take him as a master at all. Chapter 427. What is the hatred? At this moment, even if Sun Wukong officially joined the learning team, Zhang Yang still had one very important thing to solve before he set off, and that was the golden hoop on his head. Monkey, can you help me go to South Blue to find Guanyin Bodhisattva? Zhang Yang explained after asking. The gold hoop on my head was originally for you, but I couldn't take it off. I have to tie the bell, and I have to ask her to take it off for me. Quote. Is this golden hoop for me? What is it used for? Monkey King asked. Of course, this is for you to be handsome. The gold is full of weight, just worthy of your prestige as Monkey King, isn't it? Zhang Yang said it was used to give the monkey a headache unless the circuit in his head burned. After he finished speaking, he found that Sun Wukong was staring at him, and his heart was shivering. There are characters on it. Sun Wukong grabbed Zhang Yang's head with both hands, and carefully read out a line of words engraved on the golden hoop. This is a golden hoop, but it can become smaller with the spell, and the wearer's brain will be shattered and painful. Comments, because the power is too great, so the wearer can only be the stone monkey Sun Wukong. After hearing this, Zhang Yang smiled awkwardly. If I knew who carved this word, I would crippled his hand. Sun Wukong asked, how to recite the mantra. Zhang Yang replied, his eldest uncle and his second uncle are his uncles. Then Sun Wukong read it backwards in his mouth. Uncle, he is the second uncle, he is older than him, No response, are you lying to me? Zhang Yang shrugged. I'm not stupid, you won't hurt me if I give you the spell. Sun Wukong waved his hand and walked away. Then try it for yourself, if you recite it straight, it's a tightening spell, and if you recite it backwards, it's a loosening spell. So simple. With the mentality of giving it a try, Zhang Yang recited the hooping mantra upside down in a rigorous and orderly manner. Sure enough, the golden hoop on his head loosened. He shook his head twice, and the golden hoop fell to the ground. At this moment, Sun Wukong suddenly turned around and quickly put the golden hoop back on Zhang Yang's head, then stared into his eyes and snapped his fingers on his hand. "What are you doing?" Zhang Yang shouted at Sun Wukong, and then quickly recited the incantation, but the thing that made him terrified happened. It was obvious that the incantation had reached his mouth, but he couldn't say it, as if there was something stuck in his mouth. "It's just a shut-mouth spell, so you won't be able to take off the golden hoop yourself." Sun Wukong smiled wickedly. "And I already heard what spell you recited just now, so you have to listen to me in the future, understand?" "You stinky monkey, do you think I'll believe your nonsense?" Zhang Yang obviously lacked confidence, but he still tried his best. "If you have the ability, read it out, I'm scared for Zhang Yang." As a result, Sun Wukong really muttered a few words. Zhang Yang's brain started to buzz, and then he heard a clear quack on the top of his head, and he fainted on the ground. When he woke up and found himself being carried by Sun Wukong on his shoulders, he said in a daze, "Brother Monkey, I was wrong, I will listen to you in the future, stop reading." Sun Wukong ignored him, always walking as fast as he could, and wanted to get to the western heaven as soon as possible. After walking like this for a day, the two of them came to the steep Snakepan Mountain. There was an eagle sorrow stream in the mountain. On the bank of the mountain stream, stood a handsome man in white. Sun Wukong saw that he had been staring at him, and the expression on his face was not very friendly, so he simply threw Zhang Yang to the ground, and then took out the golden hoop from his ear. The third prince saw Sun Wukong's posture with contempt on his face, and scolded in his mouth, "Yamano villager, he knows how to fight. From 500 years ago to now, he still has no memory." Hearing his tone, Sun Wukong seemed to know himself, so he put down his stick and asked, "Do you recognize my old grandson? Why do you still block my way if you do?" At this time, Zhang Yang wiped the blood oozing from his head, stopped Sun Wukong, then pointed at the third prince and said, "Don't be angry, brother monkey, this should be the third prince of the West Blue Dragon King, who is here for me as a mount, everyone. It's all my own." The third prince looked at Zhang Yang. He was wearing a cassock and a monk's hat. He held a Zen staff in his hand. Afterwards, he stepped forward with a smile on his face and bowed to Zhang Yang, and when he got close to him, he quickly grabbed his hand, and then pulled him sharply, and then turned out a sword from the other hand. Stab at Zhang Yang's heart. Before he could react, Zhang Yang saw a stick sticking out from under his armpit, hitting the third prince's stomach, and flying him directly into the stream. Sun Wukong quickly stepped forward to support Zhang Yang, who was stumbling, and said to him, "You deserve it." At this time, a white dragon flew out from the eagle's sorrow stream, let out a deafening roar, and then attacked Sun Wukong with its teeth and claws. Sun Wukong is not a good horn. He waved the golden hoop stick in his hand and turned it into a white dragon as thick as a white dragon. He hit the white dragon heavily, knocking the white dragon half to death and falling to the side. On the stone beach, Sun Wukong walked slowly in front of Bai Long with his stick on his back, then stared at Bai Long's lower eyelid, brought his body close to his pupil, and asked, "Tell me, who instructed you to do this?" Mashed up. The white dragon's 7 orifices were bleeding, and his internal organs had been broken. He didn't have the strength to speak, but when he saw that it was Sun Wukong standing in front of him, he still tried his best to laugh. "Ha ha ha, died at the hands of Monkey King. Come on, I have some face, you can do it, I won't talk nonsense with you." After listening, Sun Wukong nodded, raised the stick and said, "Well, my old grandson will fulfill you, no thanks." Just as he swung down, a knife appeared out of nowhere, blocking the blow of the golden hoop. Sun Wukong was wondering what this was when he heard Zhang Yang's voice from behind. "Why are you so aggressive, you monkey? I said he was a member of the study team, why didn't you listen?" Sun Wukong turned back and saw that Zhang Yang was covered in white smoke, and the knife actually flew back to him. It seemed that the bald man was doing the trick, and he asked very unhappily, "Didn't you see that he was going to kill you? Even the scripture team, my old grandson can take you to the West Heaven alone, and we don't need so many people." Just as Zhang Yang was about to defend himself, he heard Bai Long staring at him viciously and scolding. You don't need to speak for me, you man with a beastly heart. I will only feel disgusted every time he says it. I'm here waiting for it. Kill you. Scumbags like you don't deserve to live in this world. This remark was inexplicable, and he felt that the third prince seemed to have some misunderstanding about himself. He waved his hand hurriedly and made a stop motion, asking, Stop first, what kind of grudge do I have with you? You say it first. Clear. Chapter 428, Telling the Sad Past. Okay, since you're a scumbag who doesn't want to admit it, then I'll let you die without any evidence. The third prince said through gritted teeth. It turns out that as early as when Jin Chanzi was still a disciple of Tathagata Buddha, he often had a hobby of traveling around the world, often traveling in the mountains and rivers to make friends. Once he went to the West Blue Dragon Palace as a guest. After drinking, he listened to the old Dragon King complaining to him about the curse on his daughter. When he said that he was sad, he burst into tears. It turns out that the West Blue Dragon King has an eldest daughter named Ao Shui, who is kind and lovely in nature. It's a pity that Ao Shui is a little bad. Her understanding is very poor. Even when her own sister can fly through the clouds, she still can only ride in the sea. Because of this, the old Dragon King was heartbroken. He had tried all kinds of methods, but Ao Shui couldn't fly. After a long time, he gave up the idea of expecting his daughter to be able to fly. At first, Ao Shui didn't take it seriously. It didn't matter if she was a flightless dragon. How free she was in the sea, she could go wherever she wanted. But over time, she gradually felt that the eyes of her fellow Sea Clan people around her had changed. They were no longer doting as before, but became disgusting and sympathetic. On the birthday of the West Blue Dragon King, Dragon Kings from all seas came to celebrate his birthday, and of course they brought their children along with him. At this party, the sons and daughters of several Dragon Kings performed flying through the clouds, rain and wind, to show their abilities as a member of the Dragon Clan. When it was Ao Shui's turn to play, she couldn't do anything, she could only be pitiful. He stood in the middle of the field and listened to the ridicule and questioning of the people around him. The old Dragon King was eager to love his daughter, so he hurriedly proceeded to the next step, and sent someone to bring his daughter back to the dormitory. Since then, all kinds of ethnic groups in the entire ocean have known the fact that Ao Shui can't fly as a dragon. She is depressed all day because of deep self-blame. She stays behind all day, and never smiles again. In order to relieve Ao Shui of the so-called curse, the old Dragon King took Jin Chanzi to see his daughter, and after arriving in Ao Shui's boudoir, he left sadly, leaving only Jin Chanzi and Ao Shui alone. Seeing Ao Shui lying on the bed, looking haggard and thin, Jin Chanzi sat on the chair and did nothing, just looked at her quietly. After an unknown amount of time, Ao Shui opened her eyes and saw a handsome monk appearing in her room. She couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" Jin Chanzi smiled and said to her, "I seem to know the reason why you can't fly, because you look too much like her." When Ao Shui heard him say this, a strange emotion filled her body. She asked, "What are you talking about? Can you make me fly?" Jin Chanzi nodded. "Of course you can. Are you willing to go out with me? Just the two of us. I can let you learn the magic of flying through the clouds." Ao Shui pouted. "Don't lie, many people say that. You must be a liar too." Jin Chanzi shook his head. "I'm a monk, I don't lie." Ao Shui hesitated for a while, but finally agreed to Jin Chanzi's proposal and went out with him to try it out. Of course, this was not because Jin Chanzi was good-looking, but the phrase, "because you look too much like her," made Ao Shui inexplicably like him. After going out, Jin Chanzi bumped into the old Dragon King who was lying on the door eavesdropping. The old Dragon King smiled awkwardly and wanted to explain, but he saw Jin Chanzi wave his hand and said, "Don't worry, it's all right." The two came to an island in the West Blue waters. Ao Shui strolled on the beach for a while. She didn't see Jin Chanzi saying anything for a long time. She was very anxious and asked, "When will you let me fly?" "Ah, do you want to eat some kind of elixir or something?" Jin Chanzi shook his head. "I wanted you to relax more." Since you are in such a hurry, let's start. You have to be mentally prepared. He took Ao Shui's hand and rose into the air. Took her up into the sky. For the first time so far from the island, Ao Shui was nervous like a little girl and desperately grabbed Jin Chanzi's arm. Although she was very scared, she didn't shout. Jin Chanzi stared at her for a long time, and then said, "Are you born like this?" After speaking, he pushed Ao Shui away and let her fall from the sky. The moment he was pushed away by Jin Chanzi, Ao Shui couldn't believe that he was going to fall from such a high distance, and the area below was not the sea, but the island ground that was enough to throw people to death. Ao Shui closed her eyes and shouted loudly. The airflow of the surrounding air quickly whistled past her ears, and the speed of falling was getting faster and faster. When she felt the most fear in her heart, she shouted out of the instinct of life, "Mom." In an instant, the memory was released from Ao Shui's mind, and a scene from many years ago appeared in front of her eyes. That was before the Four Seas signed the Harmony Agreement. In order to compete for the control of the entire sea area, the dragon kings of each sea area became the overlord of the sea area, resulting in constant wars all year round. At that time, the wife of the West Blue Dragon King was pregnant with Ao Shui, who was about to be born, but because of the sudden attack of East Blue, she had to go to the front line with a big belly and turned into a dragon in the air to fight with the enemy's dragon clan desperately. At that time, Ao Shui was born. The first sight she saw when she opened her eyes was not her mother's kind face, but that she was getting further and further away from herself, being used by a yellow dragon in the atmosphere of lightning and thunder. The claws ripped through the body and fell with her. The moment her mother fell into the sea, she hugged Ao Shui. Ao Shui looked at her and cried, "Mom." After opening her eyes again, Ao Shui's eyes were full of tears, and she was still falling, and beside her was Jin Chanzi who fell with her. See the reason why you can't fly. You are afraid, no one can help you fly, only if you dare to face your inner fear, can you become a real dragon, a dragon that your mother is proud of for you. Quote. There seemed to be a warm power in Jin Chanzi's words, which melted into Ao Shui's body. She thought of the moment when her mother was holding her and fell, whispering in her ear. Shui live well, you are the pride of your mother. At the last moment of falling to the ground, Ao Shui's body underwent great changes, with a majestic and pure white body, sharp and delicate claws, and those eyes full of hot tears that were full of emotion and determination. At this moment, she transformed into a dragon and soared freely in the sky above West Blue. Hearing this, Zhang Yang was already in tears. He wiped his tears and asked, "It's so touching. I just want to know what kind of grudge you have with me. Does it have anything to do with me when you talk about it?" The third prince stared at him and murmured, "I don't understand why you killed her later." Chapter 429, The Book of Confessions. Ao Shui was finally able to fly. West Blue Dragon Palace held a grand banquet to invite all Sea Clan companions to celebrate, but in such a lively atmosphere, Jin Chanzi quietly left. After the banquet was over, the crowd left, and Ao Shui asked the old Dragon King about Jin Chanzi's residence, but learned that he lived in no fixed place and traveled around the three realms. Since then, Ao Shui has been suffering every day, and he can always see his smiling face in his long dreams. When he wakes up and realizes that it is a dream, he burst into tears again, thinking deeply in his heart. Until one day, the Western Tathagata Buddha held a chanting conference, and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, etc. attended. Ao Shui knew that Jin Chanzi was a disciple of the Tathagata Buddha and would definitely attend, so he was going to Lei Yin Temple to find him. But just before she set off, the West Blue Dragon King stopped her and told East Blue that the eldest prince of the Dragon King was on his way to propose a marriage. In this way, Ao Shui missed the chance to meet Jin Chanzi for the last time, because it was at this chanting conference that he dozed off in front of everyone's eyes, provoking the Buddha's anger, banishing him to the mortal world, and starting his 10th life. The punishment of reincarnation. During this period, Ao Shui could not disobey his father's order and marry the Prince of East Blue. She thought that her fate with Jin Chanzi was over, but over time, Prince East Blue's bad behavior irritated her. In a fit of rage, she ran away from home and embarked on the road to find Jin Chanzi's reincarnation. I don't know how many years later, at a lively market in Datang, a golden koi caught by a fisherman attracted many onlookers. Of course, one of these people was a young Tang monk. Tang Seng looked at this koi's round, fat and tender body, and his saliva was drooling, but he also secretly carried the abbot on his back this time, so he didn't have any money on his back, so he took advantage of the fisherman's inattentiveness and stole her away, all the way. Xiao ran to a quiet place in the mountains. He put the koi in the grass, and then went around to pick up dry wood and twigs. When he came back with a small pile of dry wood, he found that the fish was gone, replaced by a beautiful woman with a bad brain. Why do you say she's out of her mind? Because she was crying for no reason, her eyes were red from crying. Tang Seng looked around and didn't see his fish, so he asked the silly woman in front of him suspiciously, "You stole my fish." Ao Shui couldn't cry for a long time. The Jin Chanzi she was looking for was right in front of her. She couldn't control it anymore. She rushed forward and hugged him in her arms, crying loudly, "You idiot! Why do you do that? Such a stupid thing. Why do you want to offend the Buddha? Do you know that it is so hard for me to find you, and it is so hard to wait for you?" The young Tang Seng was stunned by this scene. He began to wonder if this stupid woman had mistaken her for the wrong person, but his body was thin and he struggled for a while to no avail. He had to wait for her to finish crying. After a long time, Tang Seng felt a little breathless, and then said, "This female benefactor, just let Xiao Seng go. If you want to eat fish, take it, I don't want it." Ao Shui reluctantly let go, rubbed her crying eyes, and asked in a hoarse voice, "Do you really not remember me?" Tang Seng shook his head very resolutely. "I don't know you at all." "Well, I'm leaving. If I go up the mountain later, the bald donkey will punish me for copying the scriptures." Ao Shui grabbed him. "Don't go, you are not allowed to go back, you have to stay with me." Tang Seng was so frightened that he hurriedly retracted his hand. "I don't have a relationship between men and women. Donor, I'm really not the person you know. By the way, who are you looking for?" Ao Shui said, "Jin Chanzi." Hearing these three words, there were so many things in Tang Seng's mind that flashed through his mind, just flashed by, and soon he didn't care, and shook his head in denial. "My name is Chen Yi, not Jin. Cicada, I will say that you were mistaken." Ao Shui knew that he lost his previous memory because of his reincarnation, so she said, "It doesn't matter, just take it as my mistake, I'll go wherever you go." Tang Seng finally couldn't bear it anymore, and yelled at her, "Don't be too much, if I bring a woman back to the temple, I won't let people laugh out loud. If you are angry, go to the brothel, don't stay here with me." Entangled. These words touched Ao Shui's nerves. Her tears burst again, and she cried, "You actually talk to me like this. Believe it or not, I die in front of you. I will make you regret it for the rest of your life." Tang Seng sneered and shook his head, sighing in his heart that a woman is a woman, extremely stupid, and he said, "Please." Ao Shui was disheartened. She also knew that it was impossible for herself and Jin Chanzi to achieve a positive result, and it was even more impossible for this reincarnated Tang monk, and there would never be another person in the world to replace Jin Chanzi's place in her heart. What about back to West Blue? Facing her father, the third prince of East Blue, and all the clansmen, what should she do? She shouldn't have feelings for him from the beginning. This is taboo love, and it can only bear bitter fruit. She was wrong from the beginning. What she has been pursuing for so many years is not Jin Chanzi, but such an ending. So Ao Shui really died in front of Tang Seng. The moment she fell, something seemed to flicker in his eyes. Tang Seng's eyes changed, becoming as gentle as before the 10th generation. He stretched out his hand to grab the light that escaped from Ao Shui's body, held her quietly in his palm, and then closed his eyes and started chanting scriptures to save her. Afterwards, Tang Seng started to send and blew away the light in his hand. The scriptures of the Tathagata cannot pass the heart of a lover. I will recite the scriptures to him for 7 days, without eating or sleeping, and praying for your next life. My sister's death caused an earthquake in the depths of West Blue for 3 consecutive days. West Blue, life was killed and injured countless times, and his father was seriously ill. He was bedridden for many years. They dared not do anything to you, and they were taboo that you were the person next to Buddha. But I'm not afraid, Jin Chanzi. My sister died in your hands. Even if I can't take revenge for her at this moment, in this life, even if my soul is thrown into the 18th hell, one day I will crawl out, I will eat you bit by bit, and chew your flesh into powder, to worship my dead sister. After listening to the third prince saying these words, Zhang Yang didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Although he was not Jin Chanzi, it didn't matter whether he was right now or not. His resentment could not be eliminated for a while. Zhang Yang looked at Sun Wukong, who was also staring at him, as if asking him what to do. Zhang Yang sighed and said helplessly, "You can't come back if you kill me, your sister, although I don't know if it will work, but I still hope you can go to the west with me to visit the Buddha, maybe your sincerity will be touched." "Buddha, does he have a way to get your sister back?" The third prince sneered, hypocritical. Chapter 430. There are answers on the way. At this time, Sun Wukong stood up and spoke for Zhang Yang. "He is not the Jin Chanzi you are looking for." The third prince looked disbelieving, because long ago, when Guanyin Bodhisattva was still considering the candidates for the scripture team, the third prince was in a fit of anger because his fiancée cheated on the nine-headed bug, and he smashed the gift that the Jade Emperor had bestowed on West Blue Dragon Palace. Pearl, bring disaster. In order to protect his son's life, the West Blue Dragon King had to ask the South Blue Dragon King to ask him to help the Guanyin Bodhisattva living in South Blue to save his son's life. Guanyin Bodhisattva is considered to be the neighbor of the South Blue Dragon King, so he should give him a face, and considering that Tang Seng needs a foot strength all the way to the west, he thought of letting the third prince be his mount. In this way, the third prince was waiting for the Tang monk in Yingqiujian. When he knew that the person who took the scriptures was the murderer of his eldest sister, he didn't care about any redemption, and only had one thought in his heart, kill him to avenge his sister. So he said, "I know that Jin Chanzi was reincarnated as a Tang monk, he is a Tang monk." Sun Wukong shook his head again and said, "He is not a Tang monk either." The third prince was in a hurry. "I know you are a group, you don't need to lie to me." Monkey King couldn't help laughing and laughing. Tang Seng was obviously killed by himself, and the current rabbit is just an alternative to replace Tang Seng to get scriptures. And more importantly, Jin Chanzi has gone to follow his freedom, disappeared within the three realms, and will never be able to find him. Just when the three of them fell into a stalemate, Guanyin Bodhisattva arrived in time. "Little White Dragon, the person who took the scriptures is your master, why don't you quickly pay your respects?" She looked at Zhang Yang. Startled, he jumped and asked, "Why is there so much blood on your head? Also, why are you wearing the golden hoop for Wukong?" Zhang Yang finally saw the life-saving Bodhisattva, and hurriedly asked her for help. "Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, who saves suffering and is of great compassion, please take off this hoop for me. It's all the monkey's ghost." Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva sighed, then chanted a mantra and transformed the golden hoop onto Sun Wukong's head. But what's the use of this? He clearly knew the mantra of loosening the hoop, and Zhang Yang planned to tell the Bodhisattva about it, but Sun Wukong secretly cast a shut-mouth spell beside him, making Zhang Yang speechless. After the third prince visited Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, the words of reluctance were written on his face. "Bodhisattva, he is a man of corrupt moral character, and he is obviously a sutra learner, but he has to say that he is not a Tang monk, and he is full of nonsense. Bodhisattva, I have made it clear to you now that I will either kill Tang Seng or commit suicide. In short, I can't go to study with him, or my sister's soul will not forgive me." When Guanyin saw how things had turned out like this, she had to stretch out her fingers and pinched it for a long time before she understood the ins and outs of the whole thing. Later, she calculated that Tang Seng really fulfilled his promise that day, and recited the scriptures for Ao Shui for 7 days and 7 nights, and finally moved the Tathagata to reincarnate her soul into the human world. After finishing the calculation, Guanyin put down his hands and said to Xiao Beilong, "First, this bald head is indeed not a Tang monk. Tang monk's 10th reincarnation ended in Wukong's hands. he is already dead, and Jin Chanzi is now in where we don't know yet. The person in front of you is called Zhang Yang. He is indeed a scripture learner. The object of your apprenticeship is a scripture learner, not a Tang monk. Second, because your sister Ao Shui has a deep love for Jin Chanzi, she can only eat the bitter fruit of the middle and lower grades. However, Tang Seng later recited the scriptures for her. She has been reincarnated for more than 10 years. If you want to find her, you will know on the way. When Xiao Bailong heard that his sister was reincarnated as an adult and still alive, his eyes burst into tears, and he asked eagerly, "What are you saying? Don't lie to me." Guanyin nodded. "Monks don't lie. If I lie, the bald head is at your disposal." As soon as Zhang Yang heard it, he was confused. "Think again, Bodhisattva, what grudges do I have with you?" Guanyin ignored him and continued to ask Xiao Bailong, "Have you made up your mind? If you go, you will become the mount of the person who learns the scriptures and follow him all the way until the great cause of learning the scriptures is completed." Xiao Bailong hurriedly kowtowed and said, "The disciple is willing." After speaking, he turned into a sturdy white dragon and came to Zhang Yang's side. Seeing that he had converted to my Buddha, Guanyin nodded in relief, and then said to Zhang Yang, "This time I am here to tell you that there are 2 more apprentices waiting to be accepted. In addition, I will give you 3 life-saving hairs, which will be pulled out at the critical moment." Shouting, "Guanyin Bodhisattva teach me, 3 times will save your life." After listening to Zhang Yang, he felt an itch on the back of his neck. He touched it with his hand and found 3 protruding bags. There were indeed 3 hard hairs on the bags. He asked, "Bodhisattva, don't you mean hairy? Besides, what's the matter with these 3 bags?" Guanyin pretended not to hear, then waved goodbye to them, sitting on a lotus and ascending to heaven. Just when Zhang Yang was about to open his mouth to ask again, he felt that his ass was stabbed by something. It turned out that Sun Wukong used a golden hoop to put him on Bai Long's back. "Okay, she's hiding from you on purpose, can't you see it?" Sun Wukong said, "The 3 moles on the back of your neck, on which the hair grows." Black mole. Zhang Yang became furious after hearing this. It was the second time that he felt unhappy with this Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. Could it be that just because he is a Bodhisattva, he can play with others at will? Sun Wukong saw what he was thinking, and while stroking the mane of the white dragon horse, he said with a smile, "Isn't that all gods? The high-ranking species control everything in their own hands, once someone wants to violate their rules. The end is disastrous. Think about it again, since it is for the salvation of all beings, why not pass the scriptures directly to the people of the East, and have to do something so inspiring and time-consuming as the Brigade of Scriptures? If you must give a reason why you must learn from the scriptures and experience the hardships along the way to understand the truth of the scriptures, then what is the use of scriptures?" Seemingly making sense, Zhang Yang asked, "Why? Monkey, do you know something?" Sun Wukong smiled helplessly. "You don't even think about why my old grandson was trapped at the foot of Wuji Mountain for 500 years. Even if I could go out, what would be the result after going out? Some things, it's better not to ask. The more you know, the better. Dangerous." After speaking, he put the golden cudgel back in his ear, and then led the white dragon horse to the front. Zhang Yang on horseback suddenly realized that there was something in Sun Wukong's words. He looked up at a blue sky, and his heart was suddenly suppressed and breathless. Gods, immortals, Buddhas, what kind of existence are they? Why is Sun Wukong so taboo towards them? In any case, Zhang Yang can still feel something, and it is not clear what it is. Chapter 431. The first arriving at Guanyin Temple. It took more than 2 months to walk on the road to learn the scriptures. The weather gradually warmed up, and there were green shoots on the wasteland beside the road. In the evening, the sun was about to set in the west, and they found that there were towers and palaces at the foot of the mountain in the distance. They guessed that it was either a temple or a temple. The 2 of them approached and saw that it was indeed a monastery. When they looked up, they could see the 4 characters, Guanyin Temple, written on the main hall. A little monk from the monastery came to greet them. looked at them left and right, and asked, "Is the master playing monkeys?" Wukong was furious at the time, grabbed the little monk by the collar and scolded, "Little bald donkey. We are monks from the Tang dynasty who came from the eastern land. If we talk nonsense, we will knock all your teeth out." The little monk was frightened with tears in his eyes, and looked at Zhang Yang as if begging for mercy, but Zhang Yang shook his head at him while holding his booger, meaning that the monkey had the final say. At this time, other monks in the monastery gathered around, and Wukong didn't want to be too troublesome, so he pushed the little monk to the ground with one hand, and then led the white dragon horse into the monastery with no one in sight. When the monks saw a monkey who could talk and had a bad temper, they didn't dare to say a word, and they all gave way to him. Zhang Yang didn't say anything. He had understood the monkey's temper along the way. Every time he asked people what they wanted to eat, it was like a robbery. Asking for directions would make people cry. Zhang Yang always felt that this was not good, so he could not avoid saying a few words to him, but the most terrible thing was that the monkey knew the loosening spell of the golden hoop. Whenever this time, he took off the golden hoop and put it on his fingers and turned it twice, with a bad look on his face. Laughing at Zhang Yang. Zhang Yang couldn't express his bitterness, so he could only comfort himself in his heart. Forget it, when Shishin sees the gate of time and space, he will be able to go home, and he doesn't need to look at the monkey's face again. After Zhang Yang followed into the temple, Wukong went to find a place to tie the reins of the horse. At this time, two young monks in the temple supported an elderly monk and walked out. They said, "The master is here. It seems that he is Elder Jin Kai, with narrow eyes and thick lines, and he does not look like a good person." Zhang Yang quickly recalled the plot in Journey to the West. This Elder Jinchi was very greedy. In order to get the Tang monk's cassock, he ordered the monk to set him on fire. It was a heinous crime. Elder Jin Kai walked in front of Zhang Yang, smiled and clasped his hands together, greeted him and said, "I heard that the holy monk is an eminent monk who went to the western heaven to seek scriptures under the orders of Guanyin Bodhisattva. He passed the small temple and asked me to prepare some fast food so that I could serve him." The more Zhang Yang saw him smiling with kindness, the more horrified he felt, but there was nothing he could do. Now that he was planning to sleep on someone else's site, he could only be a little more humble. He hurriedly returned the salute and said, "Thank you, Elder." When Elder Jinchi, Zhang Yang and several other monks were using the fast food together, Wukong sat aside with Erlang's legs crossed, playing with the golden hoop while staring at Jinchi. The fiery eyes and golden eyes are not used for makeup. He can clearly see that Elder Jin Kai has a black aura on his body, which is different from the demonic aura, which is the evil and vulgar aura of human nature. When he looked at Zhang Yang again, he couldn't help laughing. This bald man looked at the vegetarian meal at a table with a look of hopelessness and embarrassment for him. He was obviously not a monk, but he had to eat so lightly. When Wukong thought about it, he still felt that he would go to the mountains tomorrow to fight a hare, so that he would not go to the west, but went to the west. This meal was so public that he really wanted to cry, not to mention the fact that there was a table of vegetarian dishes and steamed buns. He couldn't stand it just because Jin Kai stared at him with his small, wretched eyes the whole time. From Jin Chi's eyes, he seemed to be able to guess what he was thinking. "Monk, hand over your cassock." Sure enough, after the fasting meal, Jin Kai entered the topic and asked, "Since the holy monk came from the Tang dynasty, he must have treasures from the Tang dynasty on his body. Can you let us see the world?" This is embarrassing for Zhang Yang. According to the original book, Guanyin Bodhisattva gave Tang Seng a cassock that had been opened, but when Tang Seng died, he only wore an ordinary cassock, so he also wore this ordinary cassock. He didn't have any treasures on him. He didn't even go in the Tang dynasty. He was pulled over to learn the scriptures. Thinking of this, Zhang Yang can only say embarrassedly, "I'm really sorry, I don't have any treasures. I have a monkey, you can take it if you want." Everyone looked at Wukong, who Zhang Yang was referring to, and they all stared at the small ones. Jin Chi's face was a little unbearable, but he still maintained a smile and asked unwillingly, "Sacred monk, stop joking, this person must be following the holy monk to learn Buddhism. The elder monkey, who often listened to sutras and recited sutras, cultivated into a human form. The treasures I am talking about are the kind of valuable things. Quote, "Hey, this old man is really not taboo when he speaks, and he comes when he opens his mouth. Zhang Yang has just eaten other people's food and can't say anything. Just when he talks about valuable things, he thinks of the golden hoop in the monkey's hand, but it is pure gold." So he asked, "The golden hoop in the monkey's hand is very valuable. It's made of pure gold. How about I give it to you?" Wukong was also happy when he heard it. He threw the golden hoop on the table in front of Jinqi and stared at him with a smile. Jinkai sneered and sat up again, without looking directly at the golden hoop. He has as much gold and silver jewelry as he wants in this temple. Even eating and drinking tea is made of utensils made of beautiful jade. He does not despise this small gold hoop. It must be that the Tang dynasty doesn't have any treasures. If even gold is considered a treasure, then I can't say anything. If the holy monk likes it, I will give you a box before leaving tomorrow morning, and it will also be considered a face for the bodhisattva. Zhang Yang is no longer happy to hear him say that. He is Chinese anyway. To say that the Tang dynasty is not good means that his home is not good, but he is angry, and he really has nothing valuable on him, so he can only feel very aggrieved. Endured his anger. At this time, Wukong said to him, "Bald, don't you have a magic weapon? Take it out and let the old guy open his eyes." Zhang Yang patted his head, and then he remembered that there was still a fire in his body, and then he said to the others, "You stay away, I'm going to take out the magic weapon, be careful to hurt you." In fact, it's very simple to take out the flowing blade, and it's a blink of an eye, but in order to create momentum, he must pretend to scare the monks. After hearing this, the monks hurriedly took a few steps back, wondering what he could come up with. Due to the open space, Zhang Yang couldn't help but want to dance. He walked in circles and released the fire to the critical point of his body, so white smoke was blowing from his body. Coupled with this strange dance, these monks are about to lose their eyes. Finally, Zhang Yang was tired of jumping, and a violent shock wave burst out from his body, knocking the table, chairs, and surrounding monks to the ground. Chapter 432, Burning the Guanyin Academy. Elder Jin Kai looked at Zhang Yang's arbitrary control of the flaming blade, and wanted to take it as his own, so he asked Zhang Yang if he could lend him the magic weapon. Hearing Jin Kai say this, Zhang Yang knew that the old guy had an idea in his heart. He quickly put away Lu Jian Ruo Huo, and began to talk nonsense in a serious manner. "It is absolutely impossible, this thing is extremely demonic. I have only been operating it for a while. I have absorbed most of the young energy in my body. Can the elder take us to rest immediately?" Quote. Jin Kai said suspiciously. "It turned out to be a monster, then." "Well, take the holy monk down to rest." The two monks nodded, then showed Zhang Yang the way and found a house for them to rest. After the monks left, Zhang Yang pointed out the window and said, "Look at this old ghost, his mind is not right. Shall we drive all night? Even if I sleep outside, it's fine. Anyway, I can't sleep at night if I live here." At this time, Wukong was already lying down on the bed, closed his eyes and said, "No, my old grandson is tired from walking, so I finally can sleep in bed, so I don't want to go out to sleep outside." Zhang Yang had no choice but to give up. He slumped onto the chair and pricked up his ears to inquire about what was going on around him. He planned to stay like this all night and not sleep. After a while, Wukong said, "By the way, bald man, go and get the golden hoop back, I forgot to take it." Zhang Yang shook his head. "What's so good about that shit? You can't just care about it just because it's gold. Money is something outside your body. In addition, I have a lot of opinions on Guanyin Bodhisattva's way of managing people by relying on hoops. I have always it is to convince people with virtue, so you don't need to think about the golden hoop, just throw it away." Quote. Wukong said, "Guanyin follows the Tathagata, and they are the kind of people who are careful. If you lose her golden hoop, you will definitely get revenge on you." Zhang Yang was unhappy and retorted, "Why? You lost the golden hoop, so what does it have to do with me? I believe that people are watching the sky, and there are gods who raise their heads, and there is justice in the world." Wukong said, "Think about how you were pulled over to take the Buddhist scriptures instead of Monk Tang, and then think about what you just said. Think twice, bald man." Zhang Yang was silent for a while, then patted the table and stood up. "Okay, I'll go get it, you are all uncles." At this time, it was already night, the moon could not be seen when looking up, and the 5 fingers could not be seen when reaching out. Zhang Yang could only use his memory to grope for the place where he just ate. Until he saw a vivi-lit room in the distance, where the golden hoop was located. He crept over there, leaned on the root of the window, and observed the situation inside through the crack of the door. However, Zhang Yang watched for a long time, and there was no one in it except a candle light. Just when he wondered who put the light on, a voice suddenly came from beside him. "Who are you looking for?" Zhang Yang looked back and saw a dark monk standing beside him at some point. He asked, "Did you smuggle over from Africa?" The Negro shook his head and continued, "What are you doing here?" "Stealing." Zhang Yang hurriedly corrected, "Yes, take back what was originally mine." The black man asked, "Does the things in other people's homes belong to you?" Zhang Yang didn't want to pay any more attention to him, so he pushed the gate of opening to go inside, but he didn't expect the black man to grab him by the shoulder and insisted not let him in. Zhang Yang was completely angry and cursed, "Where did you get the black briquettes? You don't know what's wrong." This time, the black man was also angry. He opened his mouth to reveal the fangs inside and roared, and then he turned into his original shape. His body swelled several times, and black hair grew all over his body. Black bear spirit. Just after Zhang Yang went to get the golden hoop and didn't return, Wukong was about to go out to find him, but as soon as he got up from the bed, he heard a lot of scurrying footsteps outside. After that, he turned into a mosquito and flew out from the crack of the door, flew to the roof to reproduce his original shape, and looked at the suspicious monks below. These monks were holding firewood in their hands and were carefully stacking them around the house. The abbot was directing them, and Jin Kai was standing on the other side with an expressionless face. It turned out that he saw that Zhang Yang was stingy and refused to show him the instrument, so he felt malicious and called all the monks to carry dry wood, preparing to burn the 2 of them to death at night. Wukong ignored them and came to the white dragon horse in the Chanyuan and asked, "Have you seen the bald man?" Bai Longma said, "Eldest brother, isn't master with you?" Wukong shook his head, then flew to the foot of the mountain outside the monastery, stepped on the ground with his feet, and shouted, "This land and mountain god, come out for my grandson." Immediately, a puff of white smoke began to emerge from the place where he was stepping, and when the smoke dissipated, an old man who was more than 1 meter tall appeared with a twisted body. When the land came out and saw that it was Sun Wukong, he hurriedly saluted. Xiao Xian didn't know the arrival of the great sage, and if he lost his way, I hope the great sage will not blame him. Wukong waved his hand and asked, "Is there a monster around here? Did he capture the person who took the scriptures?" The land was stunned for 2 seconds, then shook his head like a rattle and replied, "No." He had never seen anyone answering a question with a dazed look, but Wukong could see at a glance that the land was lying to him, and without saying a word, he took out the golden cudgel and pretended to smash it on the land's head. This is East Blue's treasure in Junhai, an artifact of Daewoo's flood control period. If this stick hits him on the head, he will not be beaten to a pulp. The land was so frightened that he hurriedly knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging for mercy. "Don't be angry, there is indeed a goblin nearby." But Wukong got angry when he saw that he was hesitating, and hit the ground at the foot with a stick, knocking the whole nearby field to the ground. The land was so frightened that he hurriedly said, "The blame is that the black bear has become a spirit, living in the Haifeng mountain due to the south. Your master was indeed taken away by him just now." After listening to him, Wukong didn't rush to find Zhang Yang, but asked the land, "Why did you lie to me just now that there are no monsters here? If you killed the person who learned the scriptures because of this, do you know how much you committed a crime?" The land wanted to cry without tears and said, "The great sage doesn't know anything. That black bear spirit is kind, and it's impossible to hurt your master at all." Wukong asked, "Oh, then why did he take him?" The land said, "This. I don't know either. In short, I dare to assure the great sage that your master will never receive any harm." Wukong asked with great interest, "Why? Let's hear it." Seeing that the great sage put away the golden hoop, the land was relieved. After he calmed down his nervousness, he began to tell the great sage the origin of the black bear spirit and the past story between him and the elder Jinchi. About 250 years ago, when Jinkai was a young monk in his 20s, he met the black bear spirit. Chapter 433. Use your life to lead you to kindness. 20-year-old Jinkai once went into the mountains to pick wild vegetables, and encountered a little black bear who was injured by other wild animals. It is better to save a life than to build a 7-level pagoda. Jinkai believes that saving the bear is the same, and it is convenient to use it. The herbs in the mountains that can disinfect and stop bleeding help the black bear heal. When it was getting late and Jinkai was about to go down the mountain, the little black bear reluctantly bit his sleeve and held him back. Jinkai squatted down and stroked the little black bear's back, reassuring him, and told him that he would come to see him every day. On the second day, Jinkai went to the mountain early to guard the place where he applied medicine to the black bear. It didn't take long for the black bear to appear. It was a big red apple in its mouth, and put it in the mouth. Jinchi's arms. Since then, Jinkai and Heishang have developed a deep friendship, and the two regard each other as close friends. Jinkai sometimes took the scriptures up the mountain, and when he was chanting the scriptures, the black bear listened quietly beside him. After a long time, after being nurtured and educated by the Buddhist scriptures, he could actually start to speak. Seeing the growth of the black bear, Jinkai was also very happy for him. When the two got to know each other more deeply, they learned that they were orphans, and they regarded each other as close relatives. However, the good times did not last long, and some bad rumors began to circulate in the villages below the mountain. Every midnight, a strange humanoid creature would come down from the mountain. Some people say that they saw this humanoid creature lying on the windows of every household peeking at them sleeping. Some people say that this humanoid creature ran into the field to steal their food and fruits. Others said that he saw this humanoid creature specially eating woman and baby. In short, the more and more the rumors spread, the more bizarre the sayings were, and they soon reached the ears of the abbots of the Guanyin temple. The abbot knew that Jinkai ran into the mountains almost every day, and was very worried about his safety. When Jinkai ran up the mountain again that day, the abbot sent 2 monks to call him back. Unexpectedly, the 2 monks saw Jinchi chatting with a talking black bear after they went up the mountain. One of the monks was so frightened that he wanted to go down the mountain and tell the abbot about it, but was stopped by another monk. "What are you doing? The black bear has become a sperm, so don't go down the mountain and call for some helpers to come up. If you don't kill it, it will eat us sooner or later." "Why are you in such a hurry? Let me ask you first, are you happy being a monk?" "What are you talking about? Of course I'm happy. Fart, I see you staring at the widow of the Zhang family every time you go down the mountain for almsgiving, and you are happy that a Buddha like you can slap you to death. You are talking nonsense. Okay, what else are you pretending to do with me? And now I'll tell you directly, there is an opportunity to gain both fame and fortune, which will allow us to enjoy inexhaustible glory and wealth. There are as many widows as you want. Who wants widows, mourners? That's right, the big girl, I was wrong. Then what do you mean by chance? My hometown is not far from here, it takes about 2 hours to come and go. When my uncle was young, he was a mage who walked the rivers and lakes, with strong mana, but he didn't go out again after he returned to the village and got married. I heard him say, if the bears in the mountains can speak, they will become sperm, as long as they eat the meat of this kind of bear, they will live forever. Quote. And this kind of thing. I see what you mean, we can make a fortune selling bear meat. You're wrong, we'll make money first by relying on this talking bear, and we'll be able to spend more money by wandering around to perform tricks for others. When we make enough money, we'll eat the bear meat and live forever. It's ours. How to give it back to others, you really want to figure it out. But do you want to ask the abbot about this? Idiot, ask him what he's doing. I'll tell you, when I find my uncle and subdue this black bear spirit, we'll fly away. What kind of monks? No ambition, bah. That's right, I'm going to fly away with Widow Zhang. In this way, the two monks started their plan with evil thoughts. One pretended to be in a hurry at home and went home to find his uncle, and the other secretly packed his luggage and was ready to run away at any time. In contrast, Jin Kai, who was unaware, went into the mountain as usual the next day, but did not wait for the black bear to come. This is very abnormal, because it has never been late. Jin Kai, who was worried about the black bear's situation, had to dig into the deep mountains and old forests to find it. The deeper he went, the more and more fearful Jin Kai felt in his heart. Because the forest was full of the smell of blood. When Jin Kai finally found the black bear, the scene was as desperate as hell, with 3 corpses covered in scratches, and a black bear covered in swords. It turned out that the magician's helper recruited by the 2 evil monks did have some strength. He wanted to use the spells to control the black bear's movements, but he didn't expect that these spells used to subdue ghosts would have no effect on the black bears who were often influenced by Buddhist scriptures. From now on, there is no other way. The mage controls several swords and fights against the strong black bears, and finally both of them end up like this. Later, the black bear survived. This was the second time that Jin Kai saved his life, but since then, Jin Kai said that he would no longer interact with the black bear because he had broken 3 killing orders in a row. The heartbroken black bear Chang could not afford to kneel, and said to Jin Kai that he would never do harm to the world again. Even if he wanted his life, he would not resist. Just ask Jin Kai not to break up with him, otherwise he will be slapped to death in front of Jin Kai. Unexpectedly, it is such a black bear that values love and righteousness, and Jin Kai softened his heart. He asked the black bear to write an agreement, promising to never do harm to the world, and to do more good deeds to help the villagers. After the black bear finished writing, Jin Kai took the pen and paper and added a note on the back. If the golden coal becomes bad, the black bear has the right and responsibility to kill him. In order to better educate the black bear to be kind, Jin Kai sets an example and will always be his example, defending it with his life. Later, the black bear studied Buddhism all day long, and realized the profound truth in it, and soon he had an amazing cultivation base. He found that he could see through the evil thoughts of people's bodies, and then used mana to absorb them and integrate them into his own body. When the black bear told Jin Kai about this, it was exchanged for his silence. This year, Jin Kai, an old monk in his 70s, was already the host of the Guanyin temple. The reason why he was silent was because he was worried that the black bear would absorb the evil thoughts of people into his body. Where would this evil thoughts go? Will it be parasitic on the black bear? In order to find a solution to this matter, Jin Kai retreated and chanted sutras and asked Guanyin Bodhisattva, but just before he was about to starve to death, he did not get any hints. The black bear, who had not seen Jinchi for a long time, went down the mountain, changed into a monk and entered the monastery, rescued Jinchi, and took him to the entrance of his cave in Haifeng Mountain. Chapter 434, Confessions. The black bear showed Jin Kai the method he had learned over the past few days. He took a narrow mouth bottle, and then concentrated his mana to transmit the evil thoughts sealed in the body, put it into the bottle, and finally plugged the bottle with a cork. Jin Kai watched the old tears. The black bear's cultivation base has far surpassed him, and he was really happy for him. Then, under the astonished eyes of the black bear, Jin Kai took out the contract from 50 years ago, and then tore it apart in front of the black bear. Old friend, I have a hunch that my birthday is coming. I'm afraid it won't last for another month. For a long time, I can use the time of my life to lead you on the right path. My life is also worth it, and I will die without regrets. Quote. He Shang also cried with tears in his eyes. He shook his head and said, No, Jin Kai still has a long time to guide me and teach me. I will teach you how to live longer. You won't leave so soon. So with the help of the black bear, Jinkai learned the ability to prolong his life and became the most respected monk in the Guanyin temple. The black bear, on the other hand, often goes down the mountain to the village to help people exorcise evil thoughts and do good deeds. He will also recite the scriptures to the birds and beasts in the mountains just like Jinchi in the past. Go to the Black Bear Gate and become his disciple. However, people's evil thoughts are inexhaustible. When old evil thoughts are driven away, new evil thoughts will arise. Over time, the entire Batu caves will be filled with bottles used to contain evil thoughts of human nature. There was no other way. Jinkai could only put the new bottle in the Guanyin temple, and he asked the black bear to dig a basement in his dormitory, where the bottle would be stored. The two old buddies cooperated to temporarily solve this matter. However, Jinkai believes that this is not a long-term solution. There is good and evil, and it is impossible to eradicate it. If it continues like this, when will it end? Therefore, Jinkai told the black bear what he thought. He believed that people should strengthen the popularization of Buddhist scriptures and let them develop the habit of chanting scriptures every day, so as to cure the root cause. The black bear also thought that this was feasible, so they discussed with Jinkai. They held a chanting meeting regularly in the village and let people come to participate. The monks of the Guanyin temple and the monsters of the Batu caves worked together to do this. But the effect was really poor. People often use the phrase, "There is still a lot of farm work to do in the fields, and I don't have time to listen to monks reciting sutras," as an excuse to refuse to participate in the conference. For this reason, Jinkai and Heishang had a falling out. The former believed that they should continue to persevere and would influence them one day. The latter believed that what the villagers said was justified. "Then when are you going to do this?" "Until I die." After getting into trouble with the black bear, Jinkai went to the basement of the dormitory alone. Looking at the rows of bottles in front of him, he closed his eyes and pondered. Finally, Jinkai made a decision. He will start with these evil thoughts and eliminate them one by one. So he opened a bottle with trembling hands and let out the evil thoughts inside. "Why is the old Lee family's daughter-in-law next door so good-looking? I'm really blind to marry this ugly and bad-tempered yellow-faced woman. Why isn't there a wild animal making trouble in his home? Did he do something wrong in my land? How dare you call my son a scumbag in front of my son's face? My mother will burn down your house today." One after another, evil thoughts came out of the bottle and floated around Jinchi, telling him their evil and naked thoughts. Jinkai folded his hands together, chanted scriptures for these evil thoughts, and tried to influence them. However, Jinkai would not have thought that this was the only wrong decision he made in his life, because he did not have such a large cultivation base to eliminate these evil thoughts, but was eroded by them, and he became a container for evil thoughts. After Wukong listened to the story about the past between Jinchi and the black bear, Wukong returned to the Guanyin temple. He came to the dormitory of the elder Jinchi, and he found a basement there. On the other hand, Zhang Yang was caught by the black bear spirit in the Batu cave. The whole cave was crowded with mountain beasts who came to watch. They heard that there was an eminent monk from the eastern land Tang dynasty, and they all wanted to listen to him recite scriptures. Zhang Yang is very embarrassed. This is the first time he has encountered monsters on the way to learn the scriptures, and he has encountered so many monsters in one encounter. He stared at him with big eyes, as if there was light in his eyes. Heishang Jing prepared good tea, fruit, and snacks, and said to Zhang Yang, "Holy monk, there are so many Buddhist disciples sitting around you now, can you teach them scriptures and bring wisdom?" Zhang Yang's face was confused. If he admits that he can't recite scriptures, will these monsters cook and eat him? This picture is too public to imagine. He can only pretend to start searching in his mind. He should be able to say something. Namo Amitabha. After he finished speaking, he glanced around and found that they were all the same, so he kept reciting this sentence, Namo Amitabha. After listening for a while, the black bear spirit asked blankly, "Holy monk. Is there any other word?" Zhang Yang coughed twice in embarrassment and said, "Of course, I am a holy monk, listen carefully. Each of us has sins. Committing different sins, I can decide who is right and who should sleep. Merciful Father, I have fallen, can't see the kingdom of sin, please forgive my conceit. No one can say it, it's hard to bear, behind the glory is a loneliness. When Zhang Yang sang Jay Chou's, In the Name of the Father, the monsters around were dumbfounded. They had never seen such a scripture before, and the tone and style were so strange that they couldn't understand it at all. Seeing that Zhang Yang was endless, the black bear spirit hurriedly stopped him. Holy monk! What scripture are you reading? I've never heard of it. Zhang Yang is a serious nonsense. These sutras you read are the Theravada Buddhism in Theravada Buddhism, and the sutra I read is the Mahayana Buddhism in the Mahayana Buddhism. Even the Tathagata can't recite it. Zhang Yang's words frightened the black bear spirit. The man who took the scriptures dared to speak out the name of the Tathagata Buddha. He hurriedly asked, It is absolutely impossible for a holy monk. You are also a Buddhist disciple, why are you so rebellious against the Tathagata Buddha? Disobey the Tathagata Buddha. Zhang Yang shook his head. I don't have it. Who dares to scold him? Isn't he courting death? The black bear said, Isn't it disobedient to speak the name of Buddha bluntly? You are not afraid that the Buddha will blame you and punish you. Zhang Yang smiled and explained, You are also a Buddhist, of course you know that I am a merciful Buddha. Since I am merciful, you shouldn't blame me. I just said the Tathagata's name unintentionally, and I didn't scold him. What kind of thing is this? Disobedient. Chapter 435, Evil Thoughts Become Demons. He Xiangjing thought about it, and felt that what Zhang Yang said was reasonable. Just now is an opportunity for him to ask him how to eliminate the evil thoughts in people's hearts, so he asked, Since the holy monk understands the Mahayana in such a profound Mahayana Dharma Buddha Dharma, can you guide your disciples in the labyrinth? While Zhang Yang scolded the monkey in his heart for not coming to save him, he could only smile and nod his head to deal with the situation here. The black bear expressed his confusion. Why can't the evil thoughts in people's hearts be eliminated forever? And I don't have the ability to remove evil thoughts from the hearts of everyone in the world. I just want to protect the peace of the small village under this mountain, but it is difficult to realize such a small wish. Holy monk, please teach me, what should I do? Zhang Yang doesn't know how to answer this question. Why do people constantly have evil thoughts? The so-called Buddhist scriptures can really eliminate evil thoughts. If all people become good people, what will the world look like? Zhang Yang thought for a while, but instead of answering the question directly, he asked, What do you think the sun represents? The black bear answered with great certainty, Bright, the sun is the light of life and makes all things grow. Zhang Yang nodded and asked again, If you stand under the sun, what will appear under your feet? The black bear thought for a while and replied, It should be the shadow. Zhang Yang nodded again and said, That's it, there is light, and there is darkness. If you want to have no darkness in the world, then you must extinguish the light. Do you understand? The black bear was stunned. He took the bear's paw in front of the candlelight on the cave wall, and reflected his huge bear's paw shadow on the opposite stone wall. In an instant, the black bear suddenly realized that the evil thoughts in this world are inexhaustible. It is said that after Wukong came to Elder Jinqi's dormitory, he found a secret door here, leading directly to the basement. He came down and saw the dense bottles, and just now he believed that everything the land said was true. The corks of these bottles were all pulled out, and there was nothing inside. Wukong immediately thought that Jin Kai did it himself. In order to eliminate the evil thoughts in people's hearts, he was swallowed by these evil thoughts instead. Just when Wukong was about to confront Jin Kai, he realized that something was wrong behind him. He turned around suddenly and found Jin Kai standing behind him with a face of resentment. Such a strong demonic mind, Wukong couldn't even notice his arrival, and it seemed that it was difficult to deal with. He hurriedly took out his golden cudgel to respond to the enemy. Jin Qi's face showed an abnormal green color. He suddenly let out a terrifying laugh, and then asked, Monkey, where is your master? Where did you hide him? Hand it over, I still have a lot of scriptures to discuss with him. Wukong sneered and said, Those useless scriptures are worthless after listening to them, it is better to ask my old grandson for advice. Jin Kai twisted his neck in a strange posture, pretending to be surprised and said, Dengtang Buddhist disciples actually say that the scriptures are useless, it's really outrageous. Wukong said, if the scriptures were useful, how did you become the ghost you are now? A sentence made Jin Kai speechless. His face began to wriggle irregularly, those pustules gradually spread from his face to all parts of his body, and his body began to swell, becoming huge, and soon the small basement squeezed out. When Wukong saw that he was coming towards him quickly, he lifted his leg with the golden hoop, broke through the top floor of the basement, flew directly out of Jinchi's bedroom, and came to the ground. At this time, the side of the Guanyin temple had already ignited a raging fire, illuminating half of the sky, and the monks were still smiling badly. It seemed that they were influenced by Jinchi, and their hearts were slowly corroded. Wukong sighed, then heard the movement under his feet, and hurriedly tossed to avoid the black bar. At this time, Jinchi has become a container of evil thoughts, and has long since changed beyond recognition. His body is huge, and the skin of his body has turned into a black translucent substance. It can be clearly seen from the outside that his body is filled with countless distorted faces. The monks in the temple were also frightened by the monster and ran away. Wukong picked up the golden hoop and waved it towards the monster's head, but it had no effect. The scattered heads would automatically gather together again, reconstitute the ugly head. Wukong understands that what he is dealing with is not a living entity monster, but a container of evil thoughts gathered from countless evil thoughts. As long as these evil thoughts are not eliminated, they will never be subdued. Seeing that the monster waved his arms to attack Wukong, he could only dodge, but had no way to attack. Wukong really wanted to go to South Blue to find Guanyin Bodhisattva for help, but he couldn't leave right now. If he left, the monsters might attack the monks in the temple and the villagers in the village. He could only deal with the monsters like this. At this time, a little monster outside Batu Caves came to report that there was an accident in Guanyin Temple. The thing that Black Bear was most worried about was still here. It must be an accident in Jinchi. He gathered all his children and ran down the mountain in a hurry. Zhang Yang is also in the middle of the team. He is not worried about Wukong. Why is the Monkey King screaming for nothing? He was just worried about whether Xiaobailong would be in trouble. It was his only BMW mount. If he was injured, he would die of distress. When they finally arrived at the Guanyin temple, they saw Sun Wukong sitting in the middle of the temple, the size of a mountain, with a big belly burping there. Zhang Yang squeezed out of the group of demons and saw that his BMW was safe and sound, and hurriedly squeezed into the group of demons, shouting to Wukong, "Monkey, what happened?" Wukong covered his mouth with one hand and pointed at his swollen and wriggling stomach with the other, without speaking. Zhang Yang didn't understand what he meant and asked, "Are you pregnant?" Hearing this, Wukong was so angry that he opened his mouth and cursed, "You bald ass." But when he opened his mouth, a cloud of black mist came out of his mouth. Close. At this time, Xiaobailong came to Zhang Yang and said to him, "I don't know where a monster came from just now." The big brother became such a giant and swallowed the monster in one bite. The black bear spirit looked around and didn't see Jinchi, and the monks also asked 3 questions, and he immediately realized what was in Sun Wukong's stomach. Although he had already guessed it, he still took a fluke and asked, "Is the in your stomach, is it Jin Kai?" Seeing that someone understood him, Sun Wukong hurriedly extended his thumb and nodded at the black bear. Zhang Yang was dumbfounded, and scolded Wukong, "Stinky monkey, although that old guy is greedy for money, you shouldn't eat it, and if you eat it, you can eat it, what's it like to be so big? Showing off your 72 has it changed?" Wu Qi's eyes were burning with fire, and he pulled out a monkey hair and threw it at Zhang Yang. Chapter 436, Fulfilling the Promise. Because of the huge size of Wukong at present, the monkey hair he pulled out was as thick as a golden cudgel, and he pushed it directly towards Zhang Yang's head. Smashed to death. And Sun Wukong is not feeling very well at the moment. With a big belly, it is really more uncomfortable than pregnancy. Although he was a stone monkey, he couldn't take it with so many bad things in his stomach, and he rolled on the ground in pain. At this time, the black bear spirit said to Wukong, "You should spit him out first. This is not the way to go. I will use chanting to trap his actions, and then find a way to subdue him." Wukong nodded, then opened his mouth, and instantly a large amount of black mist spewed out of his mouth, and then gathered together and turned into a huge monster. Immediately after, the black bear spirit folded his hands, closed his eyes and concentrated on reading the scriptures. Those scriptures came out of his mouth and turned into entities, forming a golden cylindrical wall, trapping the monster in the scriptures. But these evil thoughts of human nature are extremely stubborn, and the black bear spirit is difficult to control by one person. Seeing that it is about to break through the golden wall, the little monsters around hurriedly ran to the surrounding of the golden wall, sat on the ground, and worked together to chanting scriptures to help strengthen the golden wall. Just barely trapped the monster. After Wukong returned to his original form, he walked in front of Zhang Yang and asked, "What should I do with the bald donkey? This is the first time my grandson has seen evil thoughts become demons. I don't know what to do, so now I can only go to South Blue to invite Guanyin Bodhisattva." Zhang Yang nodded and said, "Go and come back quickly. I'm here to guard if something happens, and the 3 life-saving hairs that the Bodhisattva gave me." After Wukong drove the somersault cloud, Zhang Yang came to the black bear beside him. Seeing him closing his eyes and chanting sutras, he didn't dare to disturb him, so he stood beside him. At this time, the abbots of Guanyin Temple saw that the monsters were chanting sutras to save people, but they fled because of fear. They were ashamed. They called all the monks and sat behind the little monsters to cooperate with them in chanting sutras. Magic. But for some unknown reason, the monster in the golden wall stopped roaring and struggling. Its body began to shrink gradually, and finally it shrank to the size of just a person, and the person who appeared in the golden wall at this moment was Elder Jin Kai. He is no longer the highly respected monk, but a container of evil thoughts, a gathering of all evils. The black bear with his eyes tightly closed also slowly opened his eyes at this time. Tears flashed from his eye sockets, gradually overflowing from the corners of his eyes and sliding down his cheeks. He looked at the dark golden pool, stopped chanting, opened his mouth and said to him, "Teach me how to save you." Jin Kai has long lost his mind. He is not even a person, just a container. So he didn't speak, just stared at the black bear, and he couldn't see anything in his dark eye sockets. In fact, a long time ago, Black Bear already knew that Jin Kai had opened the bottle used to contain evil thoughts without authorization. When he wanted to force the evil thoughts out of Jin Kai, he was rejected by Jin Kai, and he said he could. However, the Black Bear did not know that at that time, Jin Kai was corrupted by evil thoughts, and he had begun to feel jealous in his heart, jealous of the Black Bear. "It was me who taught him to learn the Dharma, so why is his cultivation level higher than mine, and his ability greater than mine?" Over time, Jin Kai cut off communication with the Black Bear. He did not want to see a monster stronger than him, and the Black Bear stopped looking for Jin Kai, because he remembered the last content of the contract. If the Jin Kai becomes bad, the Black Bear has the right to the responsibility as to kill him. The Black Bear couldn't bear it, so he simply disappeared. However, now that Jin Kai has become what he is now, the Black Bear feels deeply self-blame. He blamed all the mistakes on himself, and failed to stop Jin Kai in time, which made him a demon. Thinking of this, the Black Bear stood up and walked into the golden wall. Seeing this, Zhang Yang hurriedly asked, "What are you doing?" The Black Bear turned around and replied, "Holy monk, everything started because of me, and I will end it all." After speaking, he gathered his mana, took out his inner elixir from his body, stretched out his hand and handed it to Zhang Yang, and said, If you can't control these evil thoughts, please destroy my inner alchemy and let me fall into hell with these evil thoughts." Zhang Yang didn't reach out to pick it up, but backed away while shaking his head. Such a kind goblin, how could he go and send him to hell? With tears in his eyes, the Black Bear said, "Please, holy monk." In the end, Zhang Yang took the inner pill of the Black Bear and held it in his palm, thinking that he would never do that. When the Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva came, everything would be resolved. After that, the black bear walked into the golden wall and met Jin Kai face to face. Jin Kai instantly turned hideous, stretched out his hand and grabbed the black bear's neck. "Remember what you asked then?" Black Bear asked with tears in his eyes. "Then when are you going to do this?" "Until I die." The black bear smiled and looked at Jin Kai and said, "I'll fulfill our promise now, Jin Kai, goodbye." After speaking, the black bear put his hand on Jin Chi's forehead and used his magic power to absorb all the evil thoughts in his body into his own body. The black color of Jin Chi's body gradually disappeared, and the others also regained their blood and fell unconscious on the ground. Soon, the black bear's body began to swell, and those evil thoughts struggled around in his body, trying to break through the black bear's body. However, the black bear shouted to Zhang Yang at this time, "Holy monk, please." Then he recited the scriptures in his mouth to control the countless evil thoughts in his body. Zhang Yang squeezed the black bear Nidan's hand. Vivi sweated. He was still waiting for Wukong and Guanyin to come back. But time passed by minute, as long as thousands of years had passed. Seeing that the black bear could no longer hold on, Zhang Yang reluctantly kept the inner alchemy in his hand on the ground. The instant the inner alchemy was shattered, the black bear turned into a cloud of black smoke, accompanied by countless miserable and harsh roars, disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the voice of Guanyin Bodhisattva came from the sky in the distance. "Look, I came a step late again, what happened?" When Wukong saw Jinchi lying on the ground, he ignored Guanyin, jumped down and ran to his side and helped him up. Jin Kai slowly opened his eyes and looked at the surrounding scene, the ruined Guanyin temple, but he didn't say anything. Later, when the Guanyin temple was rebuilt, Zhang Yang said goodbye to Wukong. When passing the Batu caves, there was a long chanting sound of old monks and all the little demons from the cave. The two of them looked at Isho and continued to complete their westward journey. After walking for a long time, Zhang Yang suddenly saw Wukong wearing a gold hoop on his head and asked, "When did you find it?" Wukong took off the golden hoop and said, "When she went to look for Guanyin, she saw that I was not wearing the golden hoop, so she gave me another one." Zhang Yang sighed. "I thought there was only one of these things." Wukong threw the golden hoop on Zhang Yang's head, led the horse and walked in front, and said, "There are many, and there is also one black bear." Chapter 437, Gao Lao Zhuang. Zhang Yang and Wukong's journey to the west is still going on. Ever since the Guanyin temple parted, Zhang Yang has fallen into a special emotion and cannot extricate himself. Is human nature inherently good or human nature is inherently evil? Seeing Zhang Yang's contemplative face, Wukong slapped Bai Longma on the buttocks. Bai Longma blushed and pinched his tail and started to run wildly. He ran away with Zhang Yang in a flash. Stinky monkey. The white dragon horse ran for a long time before it stopped. Zhang Yang got off the horse crookedly, held a tree and started to vomit. The horse was bumpy all the way, making him a little dizzy. When he regained his strength, he looked up and saw a village in front of him. At this time, a young boy, carrying a blue bag, straddling the umbrella diagonally, and wearing straw sandals, hurried towards Zhang Yang. Zhang Yang stopped him and asked, "Donor, what is this place?" The young man was in a hurry and said angrily, "Go away, you are begging for food, you won't ask others." No wonder the young man thinks that Zhang Yang is begging for food, who made him fall off the horse and roll dirty all over its dirt. But Zhang Yang was displeased after hearing this, and grabbed the boy's collar to keep him from leaving. "I just asked you, what's the matter?" The young man struggled twice, and found that Zhang Yang was very strong, and he was probably not his opponent, so he had to compromise and said listlessly, "This is Wuxi Zhang country. Most of the people in the whole village have the surname Gao, so they are also called Gao Lao Zhuang." Gao Lao Zhuang. Zhang Yang got excited when he heard the name. This is where Zhu Baji stayed. When he thought that he was going to see his second apprentice soon, his heart blossomed. Seeing that Zhang Yang was so stupid, he didn't know what he was laughing at, so he asked in a low voice, "Look, I told you, can you let me go?" Zhang Yang shook his head, put his hand on the boy's shoulder, dragged him to the village, and said in his mouth, "No need to go, aren't you the servant of Gao Laozwang's house? Your name is Gao. What is it? Forget it, it doesn't matter, you're a supporting character anyway. Anyway, you don't have to run far, I'm the master of catching monsters from the Eastern Land Tang dynasty, Zhang Yang is also, your pigs. I'll take over your monsters, go, take me to Mrs. Gao's house." As soon as the young man heard it, he broke free from Zhang Yang's hand and said, "Tall ass, my name is Lu Kai, I'm rushing back to my hometown, you must have recognized the wrong person." Zhang Yang was dumbfounded. Since he wasn't from Mrs. Gao's family, he waved his hand and said embarrassingly, I'm sorry, I made a mistake." When the young man scolded and walked away, Wukong also walked slowly. He couldn't help laughing when he saw Zhang Yang's miserable appearance. Zhang Yang scolded, "Laugh at the fart, monkey, find me a saddle when I enter the village, my butt is almost split in two." Wukong shook his head. "No money, bald donkey, who gave you the saddle?" Zhang Yang roared, "It's troublesome for you to change into one, and you don't have money to ask for one. Anyway, I don't care, steal it or rob it, in short, you can get me one." Wukong yawned and walked to the side of the white dragon horse, holding the rope and walking towards the village. "Okay, I'll get you one." The two came to the largest house in Gao Laozhuang. Zhang Yang guessed that this was Mr. Gao's house, so he sorted it out, knocked on the door pretending to be, with a standard smile on his face, and waited for someone to give him the gate of opening. After a while, a servant from Gao Jiazhuang opened the door. Zhang Yang was about to open his mouth to introduce himself, but he paid close attention to the door, making Zhang Yang a gray face. Just when Jiading just turned around, the front door behind him suddenly made a loud noise, and the broken door flew past his body. Jiading looked back in horror, and saw a human-shaped monkey with a disdainful face, keeping a kick of gate of opening. Then he slowly led the horse and walked in, grabbing Jiading's collar with one hand. In his hoarse voice he asked, "Do you have any extra saddles?" Jiading saw that it was a monkey that had become a sperm, but he didn't dare to shout for help, so he could only hold back his tears and let out a cry, "Yes." Wukong showed his fangs on both sides of his mouth and asked with a smile, "Then can you lend us one?" Jiading finally couldn't help crying, nodded and said, "No problem." Wukong let go of him, turned around and said to Zhang Yang, "Bald donkey, I borrowed the saddle." Zhang Yang nodded with satisfaction, then walked into the yard of Mrs. Gao's house. At this time, Taigong Gao and Mrs. Gao, who heard the movement, came out together, and when they saw that the door of their house was gone, they pointed at Zhang Yang's nose and cursed. "Well, you daring villain. You dare to destroy the door of my house, do you want to live?" Zhang Yang pointed at Wukong and said, "Are you blind? You can see that he must have done it. Why are you scolding me?" Gao Taigong glanced at Wukong, then turned his head to stare at Zhang Yang, and said, "Even if Mr. Monkey broke the door of my house, then you should have the courage to take responsibility for Mr. Monkey, isn't he your monkey? As a monk, why don't you even have this enlightenment? Don't you know that the Buddha cut flesh to feed eagles back then? Sven scum." Mrs. Gao wanted to continue to say a few more words, but Mrs. Gao found a few servants and dragged it back to the hall, and then hurried over to apologize to Zhang Yang. "This master, I am really sorry, there is something wrong with my husband's spirit, don't mind." Zhang Yang could probably guess that it had something to do with Zhu Baji, so he asked tentatively, "Does it have something to do with monsters?" Madame Gao glanced at Wukong, then shook her head and said, "There are no monsters here except for that Mr. Monkey." Wukong didn't care about these, he took the servant to find a saddle for the white dragon horse. Zhang Yang was surprised. He asked again in disbelief, "Mrs. Gao, are you sure? There are no monsters. Monsters like pigs." As soon as Mrs. Gao heard the pig, she thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Master, does it count as eating like a pig?" Knowing that there was a show, Zhang Yang nodded and said, "It's the kind that can be eaten like a pig, 100 steamed buns in one meal." With a surprised expression on her face, Mrs. Gao suddenly realized. It turns out that he is a monster. No wonder he confuses my third daughter and drives my husband crazy. Master, can you help us get rid of that monster and restore the peace of our family? Quote. It seems that this matter is closely related. Zhang Yang stepped forward and grabbed Mrs. Gao's hand, and said affectionately, please also ask Mrs. Gao to lead the way. Mrs. Gao asked, are you going to see my daughter now? Zhang Yang shook his head. Take me in for a meal first. What about steamed lamb, steamed bear paw, roasted duck, roasted chick, roasted goose, braised pig, braised duck, sauce chicken, bacon, pine flower belly, dried meat sausage, one more bowl of rice will suffice. Quote. Chapter 438, Silly. Hearing that a monk asked for so many meat dishes, Mrs. Gao couldn't help but wonder, thinking that she must have encountered a liar. Seeing her confusion, Zhang Yang explained that these were all for Wukong, who was the master of catching monsters. Mrs. Gao believed it to be true, and ordered the servants to inform the chef to quickly start the hot pot and follow the menu read out by Zhang Yang. Afterwards, Mrs. Gao brought Zhang Yang to the main hall, and when Mrs. Gao saw Zhang Yang coming, he was brought back to the room to rest in advance by the servants when he saw that he had a seizure. Madame Gao prepared a good tea for Zhang Yang and asked, Master, how did the monkey elder know that the person is a monster? Zhang Yang thought about it. He couldn't tell people that he came from transmigration, so he made up a pretense and explained, actually, I have been practicing all day, and I have achieved a profound cultivation level, and can know the third point between heaven and earth. Things. Mrs. Gao was very surprised and asked, it turns out that he is an eminent monk. Can you tell me about Gao Laozwang's 3-point story, so as to open the eyes of a common man like me? Zhang Yang was drinking tea, and suddenly saw Madame Gao's smiling eyes, and suddenly saw something deeper inside. Zhang Yang took a deep breath, his hand Vivi holding the teacup trembled, and accidentally spilled 2 drops of tea. He sighed in his heart that Mrs. Gao must be the most important contributor to the wealth of the Gao Taigong's family. In fact, she is not as gentle and euphemistic as she looks, but she is actually very shrewd. Zhu Baji didn't eat this for so long after coming here. It seems that Mrs. Gao is really not to be underestimated. The seemingly ordinary question is actually testing Zhang Yang's ability, whether he has the ability to subdue demons and eliminate demons. Hi, really hi, Gao Laozwang's hi. Zhang Yang put down the teacup and pretended to stretch out his fingers to pinch and calculate, and then said while recalling, since Mrs. Gao wants to test me, then I will be forced to do so. Your eldest daughter is called Gao Shanglan, your second daughter is Gao Yulan, and your third daughter is Gao Qilan. Both the first 2 daughters are married, and only the third daughter, Qilan, is left. In order to provide for your retirement, you plan to hire a son-in-law. A few years ago, there was a person who was willing to come to the door. He claimed to be a native of Fuling Mountain. He had no parents or brothers. He was down to earth, hardworking. Go to bed earlier than dogs. But after a long time, his original form was revealed. He looked like a wild boar, and he was especially edible, so he was chased away by you. In the end, he locked your daughter in the backyard, and you haven't seen each other for a year and a half, so that's why Jia Dinggao. What's the matter? Anyway, he asked him to go to various places and ask a master to help you to subdue and eliminate demons. Wait, why didn't you find a mage to get rid of the pig demon? After listening to what Zhang Yang said, Mrs. Gao sighed and shook her head, but she still gave a thumbs up and said, sure enough, the master only knows 3 things between heaven and earth, so it's not a liar. Zhang Yang was unhappy and asked, why is it just 3 points? Where did I say something wrong? Mrs. Gao got up and went to the window, looked out the window and said, apart from calling my 3 daughters names, everything else is wrong. Afterwards, Mrs. Gao told Zhang Yang the real story. The original story is like this. 3 years ago, a burly, handsome man came from outside. He didn't know where he was from. He didn't answer anything else when he asked him. He only said that he wanted to find a place where he could manage food and house. Gao Taigong thought that there are still people in the world who don't need wages. It's hard to find people with lanterns, so he is very welcome. Gao Taigong saw that this person was a little stupid, so he named him the Gao family name, Gao Dasha, because he looked tall and big, but he was a fool. Gao Dasha usually doesn't talk to people, he always immerses himself in his own work. If he has nothing to do, he sleeps under the tree in the yard, but as soon as Mrs. Gao calls his name, he wakes up immediately. Very sensible. Tall and stupid work more and eat more. As Zhang Yang said, he can eat 100 biscuits in one meal. Fortunately, he was a vegetarian, otherwise he would have eaten up the Gao family. Because Gao Dasha earns more than he eats, Gao Taigong doesn't say anything about him, but he loves Dasha very much. Over time, everyone discovered a special habit of Dasha, that is, every night, as long as the moon appeared in the sky, Dasha would not sleep, staring at the moon in a daze all night, and even a few times someone secretly saw Dasha crying. Perhaps he was missing someone. Grandpa Gao couldn't bear the child's sadness, so he thought of introducing him to a marriage, and began to find a suitable girl for him in the village. As a result, this move aroused Qilin's idea. Qilin stopped her father from letting him do it, and then expressed her thoughts. It turned out that Qilin fell in love with Gao Dasha from the first day she walked into Gao's house, but not because of his figure and appearance, but because she saw something very beautiful in his eyes, called the soul. Qilin knew that Dasha was definitely not an ordinary person, so she never dared to express her feelings for fear that she would not be worthy of others. The daughter of the Gao family is not worthy of a servant. Gao Taigong was very angry when he learned about his daughter's thoughts. He criticized her and educated her, saying that she was the best girl in the world, and no one could match her. Qilin didn't say anything, she just begged her father not to introduce Dasha about the marriage. She wanted to wait a while, when she was brave enough to express her heart, and hoped that her parents would support her. It is true that the daughter of the Gao family is with a servant. If this is spread out, it will definitely make other people's big teeth laugh off. But Grandpa Gao couldn't bear his daughter's sadness, so he reluctantly agreed. At the same time, he became more and more concerned about Dasha. He wanted to observe carefully what ability this young man had to charm his daughter. Going back in time, Dasha has been staying at Gao's house for 3 full years. As always, he works hard and doesn't talk much. He is almost exactly the same as when he first came, and he still looks at the moon all night long. Finally, Taigong Gao saw Dasha's person clearly. Although he is a little stupid, he is by no means a wicked man. It is also a good thing for his daughter to marry him, but in order to prevent outsiders from laughing, Taigong Gao and Mrs. Dasha as a godson. Later, Taigong Gao told him that he wanted to recognize Dasha as his son. Dasha didn't seem to care and nodded indifferently. Gao Taigong was very happy, and hurriedly expressed his wish to let Dasha and his third daughter Qilin marry. However, at this time, Dasha seemed to have changed a person, and firmly rejected Gao Taigong. "What? Do you think that my daughter is not worthy of you? Don't forget how we have treated you all these years, don't be ungrateful." Chapter 439, The Woman Who Fell in Love. Gao Dasha didn't say anything, turned around and left the Gao's house, never to be seen again. One can imagine the blow this incident has on Gao Qilin. Every day she stands at the door and looks at the passing crowd. She wants to see the infatuated man who fell in love with the moon again, but unfortunately, she will never see him again. Gao Qilin, who washed her face in tears all day, was heartbroken. She locked herself in the backyard. She didn't want to eat or drink. She held the clothes that she didn't have time to give to Dasha, and spoke to it. Because of her own fault, her daughter became like this. Gao Taigong was hit, became squeamish, and had mental problems. In the entire Gao family, only Mrs. Gao was left as the pillar, and life was very difficult. After listening to her, Zhang Yang realized that the journey to the west he had watched before was fake, but now is not the time to think about it. He asked, "Then have you asked a psychiatrist to see Qilin?" Mrs. Gao wiped away her tears and asked suspiciously, "Psychiatrist? What is this? Zhang Yang slapped his forehead, thinking of where there are such advanced words in this era. He put it another way. It's a doctor who sees a doctor. Mrs. Gao shook her head. It's useless, I've searched a lot. Everyone said that Quilin is a knot in her heart, and only she can solve it. By the way, Master, didn't you say Dasha is a monster? Could Quilin be a problem? Heart not, but bewitched by monsters. This Zhang Yang is really hard to answer, because it is obvious that Quilin really fell in love with Zhu Baji. Although it is not played like this in TV dramas and books, Zhang Yang has no way to refute this. He can only nod his head. 8 precepts will do. At this time, the meal was ready, and Zhang Yang lied that he and Wukong were ugly and needed to eat alone. In another small house, Zhang Yang devoured his food, with a chicken in his left hand and a duck in his right, with a big sausage in his mouth, and his mouth was full of oil. Wukong is a stone monkey and is not interested in what he eats, but when he saw Zhang Yang's way of eating, he couldn't help grabbing a piece of chicken leg from him and eating it. Zhang Yang's mouth is full of food, yet he can still make room to speak. You put it down, that's my drumstick. Wukong had eaten all the bones long ago, shook his head and said to Zhang Yang, you bald donkey, as a monk, you dare to eat these things, it's a sin. Zhang Yang explained, the wine and meat pass through the intestines, and the Buddha's heart is left. What do you know? Wukong didn't talk to him, and urged, eat quickly, it's still early, and you'll be on your way after eating. Zhang Yang shook his head, hiccuped, and then asked, are you in a hurry to grab your daughter-in-law? Wukong said, then are you going to stay here and become Quilin's son-in-law? It seems that when Wukong was chatting with Mrs. Gao just now, Wukong heard it outside, so Zhang Yang didn't plan to hide it. He said directly to him, I solemnly announce that there is a fat-headed and big-eared pig appointed by the Bodhisattva here, who is about to become my second apprentice, that is, your junior apprentice. How about you? You also have a younger brother. People. Wukong stared at Zhang Yang and asked, you seem to be very clear about the difficulties in this journey. Zhang Yang laughed loudly, ha ha ha, if you don't have 2 brushes, how can you go to study scriptures instead of Tangsang? I advise you to call me master as soon as possible, and stop being bald all day long, no big or small. Wukong said, then don't call me a monkey all day long. Zhang Yang asked, but you are a monkey. Wukong also retorted, then you are a bald donkey. Anyway, now that I have enough to eat and drink, Zhang Yang doesn't plan to compete with Wukong. He said, go to the mountains around Jalaozhuang to find. Your second junior brother should be on the mountain. I don't know the exact location, but you can ask the land, it's alright. Once you get the second junior brother, you won't have to lead the horse all day, right? What about you? Wukong asked. The third miss of the Gao family is still waiting for me to enlighten me. The little girl is also very pitiful. Since we have eaten people's food, we have to do something good for them. What do you think? Wukong thinks it makes sense. Anyway, he has nothing to do now, so he turned around and flew out. Zhang Yang found Mrs. Gao with a big belly, and then asked her to take him to the backyard of Gaojiazhuang, where there was a house, which seemed to be where Quilin lived. Mrs. Gao walked to the door and called Quilin twice. There was no movement inside. She shook her head, meaning she couldn't get in. Zhang Yang soon discovered a problem. Since she can't get in, what does Quilin eat and drink every day? Mrs. Gao explained that they all put the food in a basket, then took a few tiles on the roof to make a hole, and then brought the food in on time every day, and when they took it out, the basket was empty, indicating that Quilin was still eating on time. It turned out that, Zhang Yang pushed the door a few times and found that it was indeed locked. He waved his hand to signal everyone to stay away. Then he raised his foot to imitate Wukong, and kicked the door open. The smoke dissipated, and because the windows were not open, the room was pitch black. Then Zhang Yang said to Mrs. Gao, okay, leave the rest to me. If you are present, maybe she won't let go. Mrs. Gao thought he was right, and left with the servants, and then Zhang Yang entered the room alone and closed the door gently. Lying on the bed was Gao Quilin. the third young lady of the Gao family. She was indeed very beautiful, small and delicate. Even with her eyes closed, she could see that she had big eyes. It's just that his complexion is not very good, his face is pale, and his body is thin, which makes people feel distressed. Zhang Yang shook his head, not daring to imagine that if she knew that the idiot she loved was a pig, she would just hit the wall and commit suicide. After all, everyone sees faces. Quilin was actually awake a long time ago. When her family brought her husband, they would ask Quilin for gate of opening, but today there was too much movement and she didn't look like her husband. She couldn't help asking, "Is that you?" When Zhang Yang walked to Quilin, he took a bench in front of the table and put it in front of the bed. He sat down and said, "I'm not the idiot you were waiting for, I let you down." Quilin opened her eyes, and sure enough, the person in front of her was not him, and a few tears were squeezed out of her already dry eyes. Seeing her crying, Zhang Yang reached out to help her wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes, and then suddenly remembered that this scene seemed familiar. After thinking for a long time, he recalled that Jin Chanzi had told him that he helped Ao Shui, the Princess of West Blue, to untie the knot. "Since you are not him, please leave quickly. No one can persuade me, not even him." Quilin, love is a matter of fate. Strong melons are not sweet. You and Zhu Baji are only related, and have nothing to do with each other. Chapter 440, The Battle of the Pig Monkey. Who is Zhu Baji? Quilin asked. What? Zhang Yang remembered that he had called the wrong name, and hurriedly changed his words. You heard it wrong, I said Dasha, not Baji. Quilin stopped talking and closed her eyes again. Zhang Yang was a little anxious. He wanted to learn from Jin Chanzi to say some philosophical words, or something that could really help her untie her knot, but he wanted to break his head, but couldn't do anything. The atmosphere was really subtle and awkward. Zhang Yang couldn't sit still, the closed windows and doors made him a little depressed, so he had no choice but to go out first to get some air. However, at this time Quilin spoke. Do you also have someone you like? Suddenly being asked this, Zhang Yang couldn't react. He thought about it for a long time, then shook his head and said, No, monks are devoted to Buddhahood and have no time to like others. Quilin asked again, Then whose name is that engraved on your arm? Arm. Zhang Yang raised his hand, his heart suddenly trembled, and the hair on his back exploded. Who carved this for me? Lin. Xiao. Fish. In an instant, a red-haired the cry of the short-haired girl appeared in front of Zhang Yang, just for a moment, and soon he couldn't remember who she was. Lin Xiaoyu. Who is it? Zhang Yang really has no clue at all, and now he has no way to enlighten Quilin's mind, and he is immersed in a sad mood and can't get out. It was as if a girl had left him forever, and he just wanted to get out of here and get some air. As a result, at this time, a gust of wind came from behind Zhang Yang, and when he looked back, his mind exploded. In front of him, a burly man turned his back to Zhang Yang. He didn't know what he did to Quilin, so he let her fall asleep. Are you the one who came from the Tang dynasty? The strong man turned around slowly, and a handsome face appeared in front of Zhang Yang. Zhang Yang took a deep breath to calm down his complicated mood. He said, As a pig, it's really unreasonable for you to look like this. Zhu Baji smiled and said, It's really you. I waited for 3 years before I brought you here. It really pays off. Zhang Yang suddenly felt that there was something wrong with his smile, so he hurriedly changed the subject and asked, Why did you come here? Miss Quilin, what happened to her? Zhu Baji said, It's okay, I just sent her some infuriating energy to save her life. In fact, since Quilin locked herself in the backyard, she has never eaten a meal from a family member. Every time she hides the food in the basket under the bed, she deceives her parents. She originally wanted to seek death, but after a long time, she found that something was wrong. Although her body was thin, she did not look like she was dying, and so much food under the bed would disappear regularly, as if someone was helping her clean up same. Soon, Quilin realized that Dasha must be taking care of her secretly, because she decided to continue this way so that Dasha could continue to see her. Zhang Yang naturally didn't know this, and he didn't bother to know. Since Zubaji has appeared now, it's better to do business as soon as possible, he said. Since we've all met, I don't need you to bow down or anything. Then let's wait for your big brother, the great sage Monkey King, to come back, and then go to the west to learn scriptures together. He deliberately said such a long name, just to use Wukong to deter Zubaji, because he always felt that Baji's eyes were a bit strange. Okay, master. Zubaji still had a smile on his face, but he had turned a 9-toothed rake in his hand and smashed it on Zhang Yang's head. Zhang Yang was dumbfounded. He really wanted to kill him. From Xiao Beilong to Zubaji, why did everyone have to kill himself? Fortunately, with the protection of the golden bell, Zubaji's nail rake did not hurt Zhang Yang's hair. He was a little surprised. It was the first time he saw an artifact that could hold his own nail rake. Zubaji knew the strength gap between himself and Zhang Yang, so he no longer stayed, but flew up and prepared to leave. At this moment, a golden circle floated over from the outside and wrapped around Zubaji's body. The golden circle quickly shrunk, and blood marks were drawn from his flesh. Wukong fell from the sky, landed on a tree, leisurely took out a peach from his chest, wiped it clean, and gnawed it. Zhang Yang was moved to tears and gave Wukong a thumbs up. As expected of my eldest apprentice, amazing. Wu gave him a blank look. Go go go, who is your apprentice? Zhang Yang said with a dark face. In front of your second junior brother, save some face for me. At this time, Zubaji said to Sun Wukong, Bai Ma Wen, long time no see. Wukong, who was still smiling just now, suddenly heard the three words, Bima Wen, which made him instantly think of the insult he received when he was in heaven. He threw away the peach, took out the golden cudgel from his ear, and smashed it on Zubaji's head. Zubaji is also a flexible fat man. He dodged Sun Wukong's attack, and then quickly launched the transformation technique, trying to escape from the golden hoop. However, the golden hoop is an artifact that takes root. No matter how small Zubaji becomes, the golden hoop shrinks. Sun Wukong was already red-eyed. No matter who was a junior or not, he picked up the stick and smashed it at Zubaji. Zhang Yang didn't look good. This stick still won't let Baji go to dust. He hurriedly blocked in front of Baji, and used the golden bell hood to help him block the attack. Sun Wukong instantly made the golden hoop slender and soft, wrapping a punch around the flamboyant golden bell, then threw him out and flew directly out of Gao Laozhuang. Stinky monkey, I will definitely be back. At this time, Bajia said unconvincingly, Damn Bai Ma Wen, if you have the ability to use these indiscriminate methods, do you dare to have a fair contest with me? Wukong snapped his fingers contemptuously, and the golden hoop flew back to his head, and said, Pig's head, today is your day of death. Baji was free from the shackles of the golden hoop, moved his body a bit, and then used his mana to reveal his original shape. His ears became larger, his mouth became longer, and his body was covered with thick and black pig hair. In comparison, Wukong's stature is much thinner, but he doesn't take Baji seriously at all. Don't destroy other people's houses. If you have seeds, follow me up the mountain. After talking about Baji, he turned into a gust of wind and left Gao Laozhuang. Wukong, who is a coward, followed closely behind. Soon the monkey and the pig came to a flat and wide place on the mountain. Bajia raised his 9-toothed rake and smashed it towards Wukong. Not to be outdone, Wukong fought with a golden cudgel. I don't know how long they fought, but the two of them couldn't tell the difference at all. This made Zhang Yang look stupid. He was thrown onto a mountain by Wukong before, and when he fell, he hung on a tree and hadn't come down yet.